come down in the metro area here in the French Quarter. Our Meg Ferris is checking out conditions in Orleans Parish as well, Leslie.
Meg, what are you seeing there?
Yeah, and Leslie and Sheba, it is the typical hurricane outer band. Just seconds before we came on camera, it was really raining hard on us. You can see how wet my jacket is. And then the second y'all tossed to me, it stopped. And so, but the winds are definitely picked up. And if you look, I've been kind of gauging this by the way you see where the waves are on the seawall here at Canal Boulevard and Lakeshore Drive. You can kind of see there it's still crashing up against there. And I would say with storm surge, we're still at that, I've been looking about that second step from the top. So the surge hasn't increased since the last time we talked, but it definitely has increased since we've been here. I guess since about 1 a.m. But typical bands coming through where they come and then it goes away. But I know we'll be seeing more and more of those. As we mentioned earlier, as we were around the city, we really haven't seen anyone out. We saw a few people earlier checking out the waves, and some even kind of swimming a bit, but that was hours ago. Now it's completely dead. All the flood walls, or floodgates, I should say, are closed up and down this area, except, where the levee is high enough where they don't need to close those floodgates. So it's quiet down here. Also, earlier I mentioned we were down by Irish Bayou trying to get to the Wrigley's area, and that area, of course, outside of the levee system is locked up tight. All those floodgates are closed, so you can't get to any of those areas. But that's it right about now, as we're experiencing bands coming back and forth, as Michelle and Peyton have been talking about. And the wind, not too bad. You can see it's not one of those where you're having a hard time standing up, but it is definitely that pre-hurricane feeling that all of us know all too well. Reporting live from the lakefront, Meg Ferris, Eyewitness News. Back to you.
Meg, thank you very much. And Danny Monteverde has been following conditions in Terrebonne for us.
Yeah, let's get over to him. He was in downtown Houma.
We're in Terrebonne Parish, Main Street in downtown Houma to be precise, and there is not a soul in sight, not a single car on the road, not a person on the sidewalk, no businesses open anywhere. You can take a look at this business right here. You see this is a sign of what is expected here, a lot of wind. That's the big concern tonight, the wind more than the water. Parish officials say that wind is going to be strong and fierce, and that's what they are fearing the most. There has been a 6 o'clock curfew in place, but there was also a mandatory evacuation order that was put in place as well. The good news is a lot of people do appear to be heeding that. As we said, there is no one here out and about right now, and that's what parish officials hope will remain until the storm passes. Reporting in downtown Houma, Danny Monteverde, Eyewitness News.
All right, Danny, thank you very much. And Danny did mention the winds there. Of course, that is in the latest update we got on this storm, the biggest thing that we're concerned about. When we checked in, when we came in at around midnight, Leslie, we were watching winds of 130 miles per hour. They're up to 140, 145 now. So we continue to watch this storm intensify.
And we have reporters all over. Let's get over to Tangipahoa with Erica Ferrando for the very latest there.
We have been speaking with residents and officials all across the North Shore as people are getting ready for Hurricane Ida. Let's start with what we know in St. Tammany Parish. People have been getting their supplies, food, and generators ready if they plan to ride out the storm. In Old Mandeville, one resident bought a water tube that's typically used for agriculture and created a dam surrounding his home. He's hoping that will keep the water out.
Plastic is there to basically, I got 2 feet of waterproofing, and then when you put all that weight of the water, okay, it ain't going nowhere. So hopefully the water won't come into my house. For Katrina, we had 15 inches. For Isaac, we had 12. And so if I can just keep the house dry, I'm okay.
He is south of Monroe Street, which is under a voluntary evacuation. The Mandeville Mayor Clay Madden made that announcement Saturday afternoon. He also announced a curfew is in place starting at midnight in Mandeville. They expect around a 7-foot storm surge at the Mandeville lakefront and do not want people sightseeing when Lake Pontchartrain water overtops the seawall.
Please do not go to the Mandeville lakefront. We are not tolerating storm tourism during Hurricane Ida event. If you are at the Mandeville Lakefront after midnight tonight and you do not live in the vicinity, you will be experiencing Hurricane Ida from the clink. We are not tolerating hurricane tourism in Mandeville anymore.
Now in Tangipahoa Parish, it was last-minute preparations Saturday evening. People were filling up sandbags to protect their homes and businesses, and gas stations were busy.
The boat holds 60 gallons of gas. I'm going to need gas for a generator. I work in the oil and gas industry. We're considered essential employees, so we're going to hunker down and wait it out and keep working and try to keep things going here, I lived Katrina. The eye passed right over us. I was in Mississippi when Katrina hit. So that's, 16 years ago to the date, pretty much. So it's shaping up to be a Katrina-type storm, it seems like. Maybe a little less. We'll see. We'll know by the end of the night tomorrow. So it's gaining momentum. Be ready.
There are safe shelters across the North Shore, but the Tangipahoa Parish president said people should already be where they are planning to ride out the storm by now, as the wind will quickly strengthen into the morning. In Hammond, Erica Ferrando, Eyewitness News.
All right. And we do have crews in Baton Rouge watching the effects there, and just in case something happens here and we have to go off the air.
Yeah, definitely. We want to get over to our Paul Dudley, who is there. They're expecting impacts around sunset.
We are at Louisiana Public Broadcasting, a large studio in Baton Rouge, serving as our backup station, just in case anything happens to our station in New Orleans in the French Quarter. Maybe there's a power outage, or maybe there's some sort of damage that causes us to go off the air. We will still be able to bring you the most up-to-date information regarding this storm. We also have our local weather expert here, just in case there is something. So you can bring us the latest forecasting from Baton Rouge. So you're able to do the same forecasting that you would do back at the studio here in Baton Rouge, right?
Yes, and it's kind of incredible. These are the exact same graphics that I would be looking at really closely in New Orleans. And of course, we're over here in Baton Rouge and able to see everything. And actually, Paul, as you mentioned, Baton Rouge may actually get some significant impacts from this storm too.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. Part of the other reason that we are here is because this puts us in close proximity to any damage that might happen in Baton Rouge. That way we can get right over there and give you the latest information on that. So what kind of impacts do you think that we're going to see here in Baton Rouge?
Well, I think we're going to see the timing just a little bit lagging behind, of course, that we will see along the coast of Louisiana and the New Orleans area. But I did want to show you.
Yeah, you could actually show us.
Yeah, let's show you. Let's get into the graphics. And again, this is the same sort of graphic that I would use in New Orleans. And I'll just show you here. This is the wind field that we're looking at with the tropical storm force winds in yellow and orange. And then the hurricane force winds, this is projected in the reds. And so as we go forward in time, note again the lag time, of course, since Baton Rouge is not as close to the coast. But here is when Baton Rouge might begin to see some of the tropical storm force winds picking up. That would be midday Sunday through Sunday afternoon. And then, of course, the reds arriving around Baton Rouge. That is when the hurricane force winds, so that would be 80, 90, whatever mile per hour winds they're going to be getting would be coming in. You can see the timing here. That would be more likely Sunday evening. So we'll say roughly around sunset or maybe even a bit before, depending on how quickly the storm moves. But fun to bring these kind of things to you, Paul, because we're seeing exactly the same thing again that we'd be forecasting for New Orleans here.
Definitely a lot more to watch when it comes to this. We will have more information on this throughout the remainder of our show. But for now, back to you.
All right, Paul, thank you very much.
And we spoke with Jefferson Parish President Cynthia Lee Shang just a few hours ago.
And she says that you should already be where you are going to be to ride out this storm.
Where you are now is where you need to stay, and we just want to be safe. And this is we're ready to respond, and we're here at the Emergency Operations Center with all of our agencies, and our first responders are going to be out there as long as they possibly can until they have to come in. But I feel comfortable with what we've done ahead of time. I was down there in Lafitte, but we never want to see this coming more our way, and the latest track is difficult news for us, but we'll see how this goes. For those, especially inside the levee protection system, we need to work with our first responders. We need you to stay put. There are going to be dangerous hazards after this storm, whether it's trees down or flash flooding or electrical outages and just dangerous conditions. And we need to give our first responders the free access to all the roads without having to deal with other things, because that's going to be more accidents and more issues that they're going to have to deal with. And it's enough that they are having to deal with already. So if you're safe, Stay put in your house. If you have food in your water, please, let's give our first responders the time that they need, and we will start putting our community back together.
Take a live look at Bourbon Street now to see where the conditions are like there. And as you can see, it's drizzling there, and nobody is out on Bourbon Street, which is a rare sight in this city. Well, as I say that, you see a couple people and a cop car there. Please heed the mayor's advice. You need to be where you need to be. Hopefully people have evacuated. Let's get straight over to Michelle for the very latest. As we can see, conditions not too bad right now in the French Quarter.
No, not too bad, but it will continue to, as I mentioned before, go downhill throughout the rest of the morning and afternoon. Right now along the coastline, we are starting to see the outer rain bands. We're looking at moderate to heavy rain in portions. We're looking at along the coastline in Terrebonne Parish, also Lafourche, extending into Plaquemines Parish. But right now we are dealing with light drizzle in the French Quarter and New Orleans. Again, that's going to start picking up as the system continues to move inland. So as of the latest update, as of 4 a.m., we're looking at stronger winds, 140 mile per hour winds, or actually stronger wind gusts, rather 165 mile per hour wind gusts. That's Category 5 status. Again, the burst of winds there. So those very strong winds, a powerful hurricane here. And we're definitely seeing that well-defined eye. It is moving to the northwest at 15 miles per hour. So the rate of this system hasn't changed. And right now the location of the center, we're looking at 75 miles south of the mouth of the river. So the motion of this system here, it is going to continue to push that water, that wall of water along the coastline here. And I'll show you the storm surge graphic in just a moment, but it is expected again to make landfall as a major hurricane, a Category 4 hurricane with maximum sustained winds of 145 miles per hour. So the National Hurricane Center, they have bumped up the intensity when this thing makes landfall, and it is going to slow down a touch. We are actually looking at heavy tropical rain through much of the day, which is going to cause huge problems for our area across southeast Louisiana, and then eventually banking to the northeast as we head into Monday afternoon. But I do think that the weather will become a bit better as we head into our Tuesday, where we're looking at heavy rain throughout the rest of today, leading into tomorrow afternoon. So let's go ahead and take a look at the radar. Already starting to track those outer rain bands here. The heavy rain north of Buras, Galliano, seeing heavy rain. Homa is light right now, but New Orleans, we're looking at moderate to heavy rain in a few spots, especially east, south of Slidell. It will be raining shortly, but in the North Shore, again, we're dry, but that is going to change within the hour as that systems get closer, or the center of the system get closer and closer to the area. Again, we're looking at landfall around noon, probably a little bit after noon, later on today, somewhere along Terrebonne Parish, and it could potentially make landfall along, it looks like Plaquemines Parish, again around noon, around 1, 2 o'clock this afternoon, again as a Category 4 hurricane. You can see that forecast line right there. So it could potentially jog to the east or to the west. At this point, we're still looking at strong winds, damaging winds across the area, heavy rain, and the winds are already starting to pick up as we take a look at the winds and the wind gusts. Right now we're looking at 33 mile per hour winds, again sustained Grand Isles, and that's going to continue to pick up. And we're 48 mile per hour wind gusts. Buras, pretty breezy out there, 24 mile per hour winds, but notice the wind gusts really starting to pick up, almost 50 miles per hour. Galliano, it's breezy. Shell Beach, 26 mile per hour winds with 31 mile per hour wind gusts. So as you take a look at the storm surge potential, again, we just updated this. We're looking at 10 to 15 feet of storm surge. Again, that is from Morgan City along the coastline there, Terrebonne Parish, Plaquemines Parish, extending all the way to, there we go. Is that the one? Oh, yep, no. Okay, yeah, this is the updated one. Thanks, Peyton. So it has changed much. We're looking at 12 to 16 feet in portions highlighted in that lavender color. We're looking at the mouth of the river, Triumph, again, Plaquemines Parish, 8 to 12 feet as you look at St. Bernard. Again, this is along the coast, and we did up the storm surge potential here, Lake Pontchartrain to 5 to 8 feet. So areas along the lake really need to watch out, because coupled with the heavy tropical rain that we are forecasting, again, we're looking at flash flooding across the area. And then as we look at Terrebonne Parish, between 8 to 12 feet. Again, that is the storm surge potential. We are looking at a lot of water heading our way throughout the rest of the day here. So we'll go ahead and break it down parish by parish. So Metro New Orleans, we're looking at rainfall between 6 to 10 inches. That hasn't changed much, but the winds we did update. We're looking at maximum sustained winds between 90 to 110, again, damaging winds. So we'll see some trees down, widespread power outages, some structural damage. And notice the wind gusts, 120 mile per hour wind gusts. That is strong. And then again, the storm surge, as I mentioned before, we're looking at 7 to 11 feet. Again, that is along the lake. As we move to the river parishes, we're looking at very strong winds between 100 to 120 mile per hour winds with wind gusts between 120 to 130. And when we're looking at the lakes, between 3 to 8 feet. And then the rainfall between 5 to 10 inches. And some areas locally may see higher than that. So we're looking at a lot of rain. And as I said before, we are expecting this system to slow down a touch.
From WWL-TV, this is continuing coverage of Hurricane Ida.
Welcome back. Time's now 4:31, and we are continuing to update you across the region as Hurricane Ida approaches.
That's right. In our latest update, we learned that those winds are intensifying. We'll tell you more about that in a bit. First, let's get to Jade Cunningham with some things you need to know.
Well, good morning. Here is what you need to know ahead of the storm. The governor says the evacuation of hospitals in Ida's path was not possible. Normally that would be considered under other scenarios, but Edwards said with the amount of COVID patients, it was impractical. Roughly 15 of Auctioneer's hospitals could be affected by Ida. Auctioneer has evacuated some patients with particular medical needs in smaller hospitals to their larger facilities. The state health department reports nearly 2,700 COVID patients are currently hospitalized. If you lose power during Hurricane Ida, remember to keep your fridge closed. This will help lock in cold air, which can help keep food cold for longer. It's also a good idea to freeze water containers. That can help keep food cool in both the fridge and freezer. And when considering eating something, when in doubt, throw it out. Many foods can make you sick after they get too warm. And remember, you can get more updates along with live interactive radar on our WWL TV app. Back to you.
All right, thank you so much, Jade. And as we said, we continue to get updates on this storm. The last update we got at 4 a.m. showed that winds increased to 140, 145 miles per hour. The hour before, they were only at about 130 miles per hour. And Leslie, they were trying to explain the difference between gust and sustained winds. So some of the gusts in this storm are 167 miles per hour, guys. For it to be a Category 5 storm, which a lot of people have been asking online, is this going to be a Category 5? Our meteorologists are saying that's not out of the question, but sustained winds would have to be at 157 miles per hour.
So we are seeing gusts of those numbers, but it's not close to being sustained by then. And then they also said we're running out of time for the storm to intensify because it needs that warm water from the Gulf. And as it gets closer to land, it's getting, of course, once it reaches land, it'll start to lose strength. And we're running out of time because it's getting closer and closer to land. I think Michelle last said it's going to make landfall around noon. Right now it's 4:33. So they don't think it's going to be a Category 5, but it's certainly not out of the realm of possibilities.
Definitely. We are starting to see impacts in the metro area. Right now, it's just some light rain. Let's get over to Meg Ferris, who's in Orleans Parish, watching some impacts there for us. Meg?
Yes, Sheba, and what's different since the last time we talked is another band has come through. It just subsided, but we're seeing a lot of lightning and thunder since we last talked, I don't know, within the last half hour. So you can see on the seawall there, the storm surge is still kind of holding about that second seawall. All right, guys, unfortunately, it seems like we're having some technical difficulties there, and we lost
Meg's audio. But as you can see, what we've been seeing on the lakefront is just that wind kicking up. We've been checking in with Meg for a couple of hours now. When we first checked in with her, the winds weren't as terrible, and we also weren't seeing any rain. Now we're starting to see some drizzling in her area.
That's right, and one of the biggest things we need to worry about in Orleans is, of course, that wind, which we talked about getting gusts up to, what was it, 167?
167 is some of the gust in that storm in the CBD area.
That's right,
let's
not
say,
here yet.
It would be like 100, 110 miles per hour. But I think that's a great question, because I think a lot of times when we talk, people go, oh, that's just the coastal areas. They're going to get all this heavy wind. That's not the case. And we made that clear earlier. Meg was asking Peyton, hey, we experienced these scary winds for Zeta. I don't know if you guys remember that. I remember being in the house very scared. He said those winds were like 90 miles per hour, right? He said for this storm in the city, we could see winds 20 to 30 miles stronger than we saw during Zeta, which I know a lot of people were scared by those winds.
And that's so scary. I mean, we just saw Asha out in the warehouse district, and there was cones around like a pothole that I saw behind her. I mean, those cones are going to be flying through the air. Even some of the signs, you just think about how strong that wind is. Andy was talking about how strong it is in between the buildings.
Yeah, our Mike Polstein did a story yesterday talking about all the construction going on around the city that's now, has construction equipment left around, and we have these really strong winds coming through. So as we've been saying, these are really the final hours to prepare. And by that we mean you can go outside of your home and pick some things up. You can bring your pets and plants inside. Other than that, though, you really shouldn't still be driving around or trying to get somewhere.
And we also talked a little bit about how this Zeta moved fast. It was very fast, and this is a fast-moving storm now, but once it gets on land, Peyton tells us it's gonna be around for a while. And I think actually we're gonna go to Peyton right now. So Peyton, tell us, it's not going to be as fast moving as Zeta, but it's not going to be like what we saw with Hurricane Harvey in Houston, where it just sat there for days.
Hurricane Harvey stalled. This is not going to stall, but Zeta, October storms are usually a lot faster moving because we have big troughs and cold fronts coming down that just yank them up. We don't really have that in August, so they're typically moving much slower. They're getting steered around the high pressure. Now, it hasn't slowed. It's still moving at 15 miles an hour, and this is as of 4 a.m. And I was just talking to Dave Cohan on WWL Radio, and we were just talking about just looking at this thing sitting off our coast. It's one thing to forecast a major hurricane like this, a strong Category 4, but it's another thing to see it sitting off the coast, and here it comes, and it's a coming no matter what. I mean, it's coming to southeast Louisiana. There's no veering at this point. 140 are the winds right now. Those are sustained, but you got to remember there's stronger gusts, and 140 mile per hour winds are at least for a minute straight. 165 mile per hour winds are our gust, and it could still strengthen some. The pressure is at 946. The pressure continues to drop, and as long as the pressure continues to drop, the winds could strengthen more. So lower pressure usually equals continuing drop in the winds. Now, I want to take a look at this track here because the final track of this thing is going to determine who sees the absolute worst part of this hurricane. And when I say that, I mean this could be the strongest hurricane to ever hit some of these communities going back over the past 50 years to 100 years. I mean, we're even talking about comparing this to Betsy and maybe beyond Betsy at this point. So that track does take it towards, that's Port Fourchon right there. That's Leeville. And let me tell you, if it took this track right here, this would absolutely be catastrophic for perhaps Grand Isle, Port Fourchon, Leeville, down here into Lower Lafourche, and for a large chunk of Lafourche Parish. This thing, the eye wall itself would just scrape along parts of our bayou parishes here. Now, there's still some uncertainty. Wobbles are still possible here, and these wobbles are almost impossible to forecast. So we're going to have to babysit this thing as it comes in, meaning tracking it. But right now, I think our best guess is this makes landfall somewhere through Terrebonne, Lafourche Parish, with the worst impacts on the center and eastern side. On the same token, this is a Category 4 hurricane. Every single side of a Category 4 hurricane is equally dangerous. This is not a tropical storm where you can literally be 10 miles on this side of the center and you're fine. The center could track right over Houma, and they could still have significant winds over 100 to 120 in Morgan City with this track. So Morgan City is still going to get hit with this pretty hard as well. So that's what we'll be watching with the impacts. But you can see there, we're already getting the outer bands. We are looking at tropical storm conditions moving through the coastal areas, and that will start to spread up towards New Orleans as we go through the remainder of this morning. And then by this afternoon, it's going to get rough for most of the area. So I just want to zoom out again and show you what we've got here. And I want to look at this a little bit closer to see if we're seeing and seeing what we're seeing with any wobbles. And this is what I'm talking about here. When you look at the forecast line and you look at this hurricane, they're going to wobble. And if you notice within the past 30 minutes or so, it kind of wobbles this way a little bit. It is possible it wobbles this way just a little bit, and it's possible it wobbles back. So it's going to continue to do these wobbles here and there, and that's why we're just going to have to watch this come on in. Landfall will be closer to around noon, and then we'll be looking at the worst impacts moving closer to New Orleans, closer to noon this afternoon, and then spreading up to the river and North Shore as we go into late afternoon and evening.
Thanks, Peyton. We've been checking in on areas, of course. We're trying to talk to everyone impacted by this storm. Right now, we want to check in with Jefferson Parish.
Yeah, Cynthia Lee Shank, the parish president, is with us right now. And obviously, we're all watching Grand Isle.
Yes. I'm at the EOC right now in Gretna, and we have a camera that I'm looking at Grand Isle every few minutes. So we're seeing that, it doesn't look that terribly bad now, but the conditions are definitely getting more serious, than an hour ago. So, our prayers are with the people on Grand Isle. I'm estimating that I spoke to Mayor Carmodell earlier today. He thought there was still about 40 people left on the island.
And you just mentioned, we've been watching these updates. We've been watching the storm intensifying. How are you feeling at this point? I know you've been monitoring this like the rest of us for days now.
Well, the last couple weather, updates we've had, it hasn't been good for us. It was hard news, hours ago. When it is looking like it was going right over Grand Isle. So it's been tough. I'm waiting for an update that is more favorable for us here in the parish. But we're going to deal with it whatever we can. Our teams are ready to go out and do search and rescue already. I'm with some firefighters and some police in here at the EOC, and they're just ready to go out and do their best work. So we're going to be patiently waiting. And I know we have the worst ahead of us, and we haven't started really feeling the effects up here. It's going to be a long couple days ahead for us.
And kind of talk about some of those conditions you have to wait for to start those rescue operations.
Well, they have to wait until we can get out, that our first responders can get out, and then their first, order of business is just clearing the roads. And that's why we're asking everybody, when this storm passes, please stay inside. If you don't have an urgent need to leave, and if you're safe staying in the house, please, it's dangerous conditions. So they're going to get out and make sure all the roadways are cleared and remove trees and check that. And then they're going to start looking for whoever needs assistance, and they're going to start the search and rescue. They'll be down in Lafitte. They'll be down in Barataria or Crown Point, because we know there are people there. Those roads will be flooded, so they're going to go out and get those people and bring them to safety.
For those who didn't watch your press conference last night, tell us more about those evacuations, where it's mandatory, where it's voluntary, some of the road closures, everything people need to know who live in Jefferson Parish.
Yes, I called a mandatory evacuation for outside of the hurricane protection system. So that would be the Grand Isle area, of course, Lafitte, Lower Lafitte, Barataria, and Crown Point. And then within the hurricane protection system, we did a voluntary evacuation. And I do believe many people left. I was out driving the roads a couple hours ago, and it really seemed very empty. All my friends left, my family left. So that's good news for us. I know it was long trips to get to Florida and Houston today. I heard, but I'm glad they're out of the cone, and I'm glad they're safe. And I'm sure they're all praying for us, that those that are in here. And we're going to try to hope that this goes through not as catastrophic as it could be. We're gonna really hope for the best. And I know everybody is sending us, their prayers.
And we definitely appreciate it. Let's talk about these updates. The storm surge totals have not been great at all. I know that's a big concern for those lower lying areas. In some areas, we're looking at as much as 15 to 16 feet of storm surge being anticipated.
Yeah, and that's just the danger. I'll say time and time again, all the weapons of a hurricane we're very susceptible to in Jefferson Parish, because we have the lower lying areas and the storm surge. And, if you haven't been to Grand Isle already had a lot of land loss, but it is a narrow island. It's got houses on both sides and one road going down the middle. So it takes the first punch for us. If the storm gets weaker up here, it's because Grand Isle and those areas take the first punch for us. And that's when those storm surge numbers came out. I realized it was a very, very dire situation for us, very life-threatening situation for us. So I think I think more people got out of Grand Isle than normal. A lot of times people want to stay, and that was really good news. the mayor really thought probably 95% of the island evacuated. So that was good news. But of course, we're very, very concerned about the people that are still on the island.
And of course, it's 4:40 in the morning. You're talking with us. You just got off the air with CNN. The Emergency Operations Center, what do you do from here? Is it just sit and wait now?
We sit and wait, and we will respond. I remember one storm before it got bad, there was a fire and we were responding to. So we have not had any activity now. Thank goodness there's not a lot of activity. There's nobody on the street. So hopefully we're just going to sit and wait for the storm to pass. I think it's going to be quite a long time. We'll be here. And then, these folks are ready to go to action, as I've said. So I'm probably here in this building with about 70 people maybe. Wow. So, it represents all our partner agencies and any kind of need we have. These are the folks that communicate with their agencies and really have all the resources to bear for us in Jefferson Parish. So this is our Emergency Operations Center. So we're here and we're just hoping for the best. And our folks are ready to do work. They're ready to get out there. So.
All right, before we let you go, we just want to give you a final word to speak to your residents, what they should be doing in these final hours before we really start to see the bad impacts of the storm.
So remember, the secondary effects of the storm in Louisiana are almost as dangerous as the direct effects. So, people can get after storm, and that's where we're looking at now. We want you to stay where you are until the storm passes. But remember, the dangers are there. And in Louisiana, we've lost a lot of lives to people post-storm. So whether it's trees down, whether it's live electricity, whether it's generators being improperly used, be very, very careful. Once the storm passes does not mean the threat is over. There are many, many more threats out there. So we need to minimize the injuries because remember, we're a COVID community. Our hospitals are already filled. So let's not have anything that we don't need to happen just because of actions that we did, we could have waited on. So that is really my message to the citizens of Jefferson Parish.
And you did mention all those people standing by to rescue people. We want to just thank them, and we'll definitely be praying for their safety. And thank you so very much. Cynthia Lee Shang, the parish president with Jefferson Parish, will be checking in with you later this afternoon.
All right,
you all be safe too.
Yeah, we appreciate you joining us. All right, let's get back over to Peyton. We're talking about Jefferson Parish there, talking about those lower lying areas. We had to talk about storm surge.
Really concerned with Grand Isle. We are. This type of storm, if it were to take the perfect track for our worst case scenario, I guess I should say, you have to wonder what would be left in Grand Isle after this type of storm. I mean, you're talking winds that could be gusting over 165, 70 miles an hour. That's a problem in and of itself, but then you get 16 foot of storm surge on there, and you just wonder. Now, the storm right now, there's the mouth of the river. We've got our buoys out here. This buoy's not in the thick of it yet, but it's gusting to 75 as the eye moves towards it, and the eye's going to pass right near that buoy. It'll be interesting to see exactly what it is showing. The most intense winds are going to be on this eastern side, and that's why we're so concerned for lower Lafourche, through Lafourche, and over towards Grand Isle. This is not a good scenario for these areas down along our coast. Now let's take a look at the current winds because it is getting a little breezy out there. We are gusting to 32 in Grand Isle. We were gusting to around 40 something earlier. So at times we'll get some showers and rain bands that move through that produce stronger wind gusts. Now as you come inland a bit, we really don't have much in the way of strong winds just yet in Thibodeau or Homa. Galliano 21's your gust. The airport's gusting to 24, 30 at Lakefront. So not a big deal right now. You still have time in New Orleans, in the Bayou parishes, up towards Homa, Thibodeau, River parishes, North Shore. Not necessarily to get out on the roads and evacuate. I think that time has really come to an end for most people because we don't want you stuck on the road. But if you have things you can secure outside that you don't want flying around in these winds later on today, you still have time to do that for our inland areas. Coastal areas, I hope you evacuate, and I hope you're watching us on your telephone or computer over in Houston or Austin. I really do, because it's just too frightening to think of anyone staying down there in these areas to ride this out. Now here's a look at radar. There's the outer bands of Ida. You can see Ida's continuing to encroach on the coastal areas. There's the eye. And that eye is wrapped up all the way around. What does that tell us? This thing is organized, and it's going to continue to organize. We've been tracking lightning in this thing, and whenever you have lightning in an eye wall, that's a sign that it is a really intense hurricane. So that's a trend we'll also be keeping an eye on. We do have some heavy rain moving through parts of the area, and these are going to produce some strong wind gusts, upwards of about 40 miles an hour. We've got a pretty big band coming up into the metro pretty soon, so heavy rain will be moving in within the next 20 minutes or so. That'll produce wind gusts to maybe 30, and then we've got heavy rain moving over the lake. So as you head up towards the North Shore, might start to see a little bit in the way of showers across the area. So as we've been talking about, we're going to be babysitting this thing and watching its track along our forecast track, and it's going to wobble a little bit. Now, here's a trend we notice right now. If you look at that very closely, this is over the past 2 hours, and this track was put out at 4 a.m. It's tracking just a hair, but these little minor details can have big differences on our exact impacts. So we're looking at, I was just getting an update. We're gusting to 76 miles per hour down in the Mississippi Canyon area. That's out in the Gulf of Mexico as Ida moves on in. So you can see the eye there is tracking pretty close to where we have that line, but it's a little bit on this side of it. So it's hard to say for sure if it's just wobbling. And it is possible it wobbles a little bit this way, it wobbles a little bit this way. That's sometimes common in these really intense hurricanes like this as they circulate and they just spin and kind of wobble as they do so. So that is a trend we'll be watching for today. Now, we've been talking about these areas and just extremely concerned with lower Lafourche, lower Terrebonne, Cocodrie, Chauvin, even up towards Houma, Galliano, Leeville, outside the levees down here, Port Fourchon, Grand Isle, even parts of Plaquemines Parish. This is the zone that is going to get hammered later on this morning and around lunchtime. The worst of this for down here is going to be around lunchtime. Winds could be 100, gusting over 160, 170 miles an hour. You notice we're already gusting to 165, and we are expecting this to strengthen a little bit more. The National Hurricane Center has this getting up to 145 by around landfall. So they have it making landfall still as a Cat 4. A Cat 5, by the way, would have to be 157 miles per hour. So it'd have to do a pretty dramatic jump, but either way you look at it, whether it's a Cat 4 or a Cat 5, they both produce catastrophic damage. So you need to, I really do hope no one stayed down there. So there's the track for you. You can see there, as it moves up and makes landfall around lunchtime today, somewhere near Port Fourchon, Terrebonne Bay, it moves up through the area. All of our area is still on the east side, and then up towards Baton Rouge by midnight. So we'll be looking at it between about the next whole day, all day, and even into tonight. It's still going to be moving through southeast Louisiana, and it's not going to be until about tomorrow morning that it's up into the Jackson area, potentially still as a strong tropical storm or Category 1 hurricane.
And Peyton, can you go back to that graphic where you can kind of see the entire storm moving around? We're trying to get as many questions in from our viewers and other reporters who are out in the field. Our Danny Monteverdi has a great question, but I need to see that graphic to kind of explain to you. There's like an empty space.
Yes.
Yeah. You see that empty space there? He's asking what that is. What's going to happen there when that passes over?
There's just areas in a hurricane where you don't get constant rainfall. So it's still going to be breezy here, but these are just some outer bands that are swinging on through. So the core of the hurricane is here. That's where the most intense part is going to be, but this is going to be more of like a weak hurricane tropical storm condition, and it's still going to be breezy there. There's just no rain in that point. So that's pretty common in any tropical system or hurricane.
Gotcha. So when it makes landfall, it starts to obviously lose its strength. So, I mean, will that space kind of break it up a little bit to where the eye loses strength before it gets to land, or it won't lose that strength until it specifically gets to land?
It's hard to say, and one thing that makes it difficult forecasting down here is how shallow our water is off the coast here. So sometimes if a storm's moving slow enough, it can upwell some of that cooler water from the bottom. But being a Category 4, this thing would have to rapidly weaken, and it just doesn't look like it's going to do that. We think it's going to strengthen up until landfall. Once it gets inland, though, it's going to take some time for this to weaken, but it will weaken. And between the coast and Baton Rouge, it'll probably go from a 4 to a 1. And that's going to take it throughout the afternoon hours into this evening. So that could take about 12 hours for it to go from a 4 to a 1. That's our current forecast, at least. And that's simply because it's losing the fuel of the warm sea surface temperature.
And are you expecting the impacts to be worse in Baton Rouge or New Orleans?
You know, at this point, with our trends overnight and with this coming a little bit closer to New Orleans, we'll still be on that edge of that outer eye wall. And if that eye wall does move through New Orleans, we could certainly see wind gusts over 100 to 110, maybe even a little bit higher in parts of the metro. I think Baton Rouge has a similar scenario where they could see winds of about 100 miles per hour as well. So anyway you look at it, they'll be dealing with the wind threat. We'll be dealing with the wind threat, but I think our rain threat is much higher here than Baton Rouge. They could definitely see some heavy rain, but southeast Louisiana is where we could see that 10 to maybe 15 inches of rain. On top of something they don't really worry about there is storm surge. We worry about storm surge down here and the lake rising. So our rivers on the North Shore and things like that.
Gotcha. Different things, different areas of concern.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you so much, Peyton.
Now let's head back out to Terrebonne to Danny Monteverdi for the latest there.
Good morning, Leslie. We are here in Gray, Louisiana. That's near Houma, and we are at the Terrebonne Emergency Operations Center. They're in full swing here as we prepare for Ida to make landfall later today, probably here near Terrebonne Parish and Lafourche parishes, as we've seen so much recently. But let's take a look at how conditions are right now. We've got photographer Troy Tubes can zoom over, and you see really it's just kind of a misting rain right now, and that's about the worst we've seen so far this morning. There's really right now not much wind, a little bit of a breeze. And again, this is about the worst the rain has been so far. That's probably started within about the past hour and a half, I would say. It's been steady, but nothing too bad. I guess the key phrase, unfortunately, is just yet. As we know, we're expecting things to quickly deteriorate as the day goes on, and so that what we see right now, unfortunately, is not going to be what we see later. Here in the Bayou parishes, though, we've gone around to Thibodaux and to Houma, and what we've seen so far is not a lot, and that's frankly what parish officials are hoping to see. There was a mandatory evacuation order here in Terrebonne Parish, and for anyone who stayed a 6 o'clock curfew, in Lafourche Parish, a 6 o'clock curfew as well. And in our drives overnight, early morning hours, we saw really almost no one except a handful of police officers, I think a few emergency response vehicles, and that's about it. So that in one sense, it sounds like people either heeded the directions to evacuate this area or they're doing their best to stay inside. We were in downtown Thibodaux, downtown Houma, and really the best way to describe it were ghost town situations. Again, not a soul on the street, no vehicles, no people, nothing. Businesses boarded up in some instances, just lights off and shut down entirely in others. And so again, right now, this morning here in the Bayou parishes, it is a just hurry up and wait sort of situation. Unfortunately, there's not much anyone else can do at the time. But again, the good news right now is that the effects are minimal to none. In an ideal world, it would stay that way, and you never know what can happen. We can always hope it'll stay that way. But right now, again, just a light rain, a little bit of a breeze. There's some flags here at the Emergency Operations Center that have been consistently kind of flapping, but nothing severe right now. And so again, that is the latest from here in the Terrebonne Emergency Operations Center in Gray, Louisiana. This is Danny Monteverdi, Eyewitness News, reporting live.
All right, Danny, thank you very much for that update. We're actually getting the latest update on the storm, and we're learning that it is stronger. We are going to go to break, but we're going to have that from Peyton Malone coming up right after this. Don't go away.
From WWL-TV, this is continuing coverage of Hurricane Ida.
Thank you for continuing to watch here as we track Hurricane Ida. We just got the 5 a.m. update. We're getting hourly updates now, and the hurricane continues to grow stronger. It is a 145 mile per hour sustained storm now. That is a Category 4, and it's only 80 miles south of Grand Isle. So time has run out in Grand Isle, and tropical storm hurricane conditions will continue to move on in through the rest of the morning and get there by around lunchtime. There's the track. Look at this number, though. This is the number that's just shocking. I mean, it's all shocking, but sustained winds 145, gusting to 165. That could go up to around 170 miles per hour. That type of wind will destroy any structure. And look at the northwest movement. It hasn't slowed down. It's still moving at its constant rate, which has been about 15 miles per hour, which has been the case for the past about 24 hours. So you can see there that red line I've drawn on here is the path of this thing. And we are extremely concerned. And we're not being dramatic here, folks. This is a Category 4. This is a strong Category 4 storm that's going to be impacting parts of southeast Louisiana. The current track of it does take it straight up through Houma and Thibodaux. Earlier, it was more along LA1 here. It shifted a little bit, but these minor shifts are expected. This could wobble back this way a little bit. It could wobble this way, and it could wobble back and forth all the way up until landfall. So the key message here is that the Bayou parishes, Terrebonne, Lafourche, especially lower Terrebonne, lower Lafourche, lower Jefferson, Grand Isle, and even Plaquemines, with this current track and forecast, are going to get absolutely hammered by a strong Category 4 storm with winds 145 miles an hour. That could go up even more. Now, a lot of people have been wondering, is this going to be a Cat 5? A Category 5 would be 157 miles an hour. So it has about 10 more miles an hour to go there. No guarantee it does it, but anyway you look at it, this is going to be a devastating storm for areas. Pressure is 946. That's what we'll be watching. When pressure level is off, we'll probably see the intensity and the winds level off. But anyway, it is going to be moving on in. So we've got showers, outer bands moving on through the area. These will produce some gusty 40 to 50 mile per hour winds. We're starting to get in our tropical storm conditions down along the coast. Hurricane conditions will start very soon down there along the coast as well. So Ida is intensifying, and here's the latest track. There it is, moving up to the north, making its turn. It'll be near Baton Rouge by tonight. We've been showing you the radar here, and we've been tracking just how big that eye is. And it's not a giant eye. And let me erase this here because I want to do this. I haven't done it in about an hour. The eye itself is in between about 20 and 30 miles in diameter. It's actually about 20 miles. It looks like it maybe shrunk just a little. So overall, the eye's not giant, but the worst part of the hurricane is going to be around that eye wall, especially on this side. This is where we're clocking those 165 mile per hour wind gusts are going to be right there on the eastern side of that eye wall. Now, showing you the track here, let me time it out for you, and when you can see the worst conditions moving on into your area. The track of this thing really has not shifted over the past 2 or 3 days, really. There they have it making landfall. Notice as they have it at 1:45 this afternoon. So it'll be interesting to see, does it continue to intensify up until landfall around lunchtime? We'll say around noon. Or does it kind of cap off or try to weaken some as it gets over this continental shelf? Either way, it looks like it's going to be a strong Category 4 landfall. We're just going to have to watch it and see what it ends up doing. Then it makes the turn, around midnight to noon, or around midnight, just after midnight. It's near Baton Rouge, probably still as a Category 1 storm, so it's going to take it about 12 hours to go from a 4 to a 1. That means it will be a hurricane over pretty much all of southeast Louisiana as we go through this afternoon, and we will be dealing with the worst of it through the afternoon hours for inland areas. The coast will be dealing with the worst of it this morning and around lunchtime, and it's not going to stop. It's going to linger all the way into this evening, into parts of tonight. So to give you an idea on some of the other impacts and the timing of when the worst could be moving in, let's time it out for you. That's 8 a.m., the worst of it heading towards our coast. By 10 to 11 o'clock, there's the eye wall moving into the coastal areas. Winds start to really pick up in Houma, Thibodaux, and the New Orleans area about lunchtime. Could start to see some gusts 70, 80, 90, 100 plus miles an hour. South of the lake, closer to lunchtime, and then this will continue to just spread over the area as we go through the afternoon hours with wind gusts. Look at all these 100 plus mile per hour wind gusts, 127, 130, 125, up to nearly the 80s and 90s in New Orleans, and that will probably only get higher. The big question right now is the eye wall, the eye, where does it go? The closer you are to this eye and this part of the eye wall, eastern part. That's where the worst part of the hurricane is going to be with regard to wind. If that eye wall stays just to the west of New Orleans, maybe we don't get the 110 mile per hour winds, but we're going to get probably 80 to 90. So that'll be the big question. But really, if you are in New Orleans to the west, there's a pretty good shot you see winds over 110, 120 later on through the afternoon and into the evening. This is at 6, 7 o'clock later today. The eye is just there in between Houma and Baton Rouge, still gusting over 100 in parts of the river parishes by sunset. And then that's when it will really start to get bad on the North Shore. The North Shore will really start to see winds pick up closer to sunset and going into the midnight hour. This is at midnight to paint the picture. We're going to be dealing with this all day long and even into tonight. We will start to see wind gusts over 70 to 80 to 90 miles an hour up in parts of the North Shore. Notice in Mississippi, not as bad, maybe some wind gusts to 60 to 70 to 80, but not into the 100 area. And then this is waking up Monday morning. About 7 o'clock on Monday, Ida is lifting up north of Macomb. We're getting some breaks in the heaviest rain, but we've still got strong winds of 60 to 50 to 70 miles per hour. So it may not be until Monday afternoon before winds are below tropical storm force. That's when it's safe to get out and do stuff or be on bridges and things like that. You don't be driving on any bridges when winds are this strong. Now, something else we need to talk about here. A Category 4 storm like this, every single threat is a big threat for someone. The surge values have gone up here. We bumped them up to 12 to 16 feet as you go down into Lower Jefferson, Lower Lafourche, and on the west bank of Plaquemines. This will be funneling up into Jefferson Parish here. Think of Jean Lafitte and Lafitte down here. Could see significant surge of up to 16 feet. Up into St. Charles Parish on this side of the river towards Luling and Booty, that water will be coming up. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Thibodaux, Houma will be on that dividing line of the track. We're thinking 8 to 12 feet now for Terrebonne Parish, but if that track shifts a little bit this way, we could see more of a 16-foot surge for Houma and up into Terrebonne Parish. It just depends on that track. 8 to 12 feet, this is a little bit higher for the east bank of Plaquemines and up into St. Bernard. Think Wyclowski, Hopedale, and Shell Beach. Also 8 to 12 feet for areas as you get into right outside Lake Pontchartrain. We're talking outside the levee protection system in New Orleans, out in eastern New Orleans. Orleans Parish, excuse me. And then in the lake, 5 to 8 feet. We bumped that up just a little bit. 4 to 6 feet in Lake Maurepas, and then 4 to 7 feet for Harrison County. Still going with 8 to 12 feet for our friends over in Hancock County, up into Bay St. Louis, and especially up into the shoreline area and up into the Jordan River, all the way past I-10. Could see some inundation come on up. So storm surge. This is devastating storm surge. You couple that with wind gusts 160, 170 miles an hour, and that's absolutely catastrophic damage for areas down there along the coast. This is also going to be a big deal. Our rain chances and our rain totals, we're growing more confident that this could be a big flooding event as well. And I know you're thinking, oh my gosh, we're dealing with surge, wind, and flooding potential? Yes. 15 inches of rainfall possible, certainly for areas just towards the east of that eye. I mean, you're talking about the eye going from here to here, taking a whole, afternoon, 12 hours to do it. So it's possible. It rains pretty much all afternoon. It could be very heavy, and that's why our 15 inches is certainly reasonable. Now, that, of course, in New Orleans would lead to flooding with regard to inside the levees. I think what's going to happen here, we're not really concerned with the surge coming inside the levees in New Orleans, but the flooding potential from the heavy rainfall. So at times, especially if you stay and you look out your door and you see water coming up in the roads, it's more than likely thanks to rainfall and the pumps trying to keep up with it. So that's a major concern with flooding across the city. If your car's here, park it high. 10 inches of rainfall seems like a very good bet for a lot of areas, but it does seem like 15 inches is in the realm of possibilities, and we could see areas that pick up over 15 inches of rainfall. That's a big concern. The other problem is we got to talk about the North Shore rivers here, and we're not going to have a great idea on what they're going to do until we get and see where that rain is actually falling. But a lot of these rivers are in a flood warning now, and if you do live along one of the rivers on the North Shore, you've got to plan for worst case scenario here in these types of situations. You're talking maybe 10 to 15 inches of rain added on to 5 to 8 inches or 5 to 8 feet of storm surge rise in the lake. That's not going to allow those rivers to drain into Lake Pontchartrain. So you will see a prolonged period of flooding along those rivers. And then, of course, the wind threat. This is what we typically aren't extremely concerned with wind with systems, but when you start getting into major hurricanes, Cat 4s, this is going to be a big deal. Wind gusts near the coast and right near that eastern eye wall. are going to be about over 160 near the center of that storm. And then it's very possible a lot of areas in this white see at least 110 mile per hour wind gusts. Eric?
And Peyton, for people who are just joining us now, you went to bed, it was a Category 2, we get up, it's a Category 4. Is this track almost in stone now? Is there anything that could drive it farther to the west or bring it closer to the east to us?
Wobbles. And speaking of
besides wobbles
no.
can mean...
Yeah, right. No, I mean, if anything, I mean, the track is coming to southeast Louisiana, and it's just where does it make landfall? Terrebonne Parish or Plaquemines? That's still a possibility. Anywhere between there is still a possibility of landfall, but it's coming on in here. And do you notice this, Eric? Do you see it kind of going to the east of this? This is the forecast line. So what does that mean? Does that mean it continues to track more like this? Maybe it comes closer and makes landfall right in Grand Isle, and Plaquemines Parish takes the brunt of it. That would not be good for New Orleans. That would put that eastern eye wall right over the city this afternoon. It's also possible this wobbles this way and then it decides to do this and it comes up towards Terrebonne. But the track at this point, it's coming here.
Yeah, and then the fact that this is happening on the 16th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina is not lost to anybody. I mean, a storm like this, a Category 4, Hurricane Katrina, was a Category 5, but it hit as a Category 3.
Yeah.
Anyway, this could weaken when it comes ashore?
It is possible. You know, the trends have not been weakening at all. That radar just went out. The trends have not been weakening at all. Now, it is possible it kind of caps off, and we'll see what it does, but right now there's no indication that it is going to weaken. The wind shear is not terribly high, and it's just so organized. I mean, that is so impressive to see as a hurricane. The structure of it is just a classic, devastating, Category 4 hurricane.
Yeah, and depending on where it does make landfall finally, if it's a real marshy area, that's not going to weaken the storm any.
It's not. This is going to take its time. I was showing you it's going to make landfall, we'll say here about noon today, and then by midnight it's going to be by Baton Rouge. So within that scale, traveling from the coast to Baton Rouge, it's going to be going from about a 4 to a 1. So it's not going to, it'll weaken, but it's going to take all day to go from a 4 to a 3. It'll probably stay a 2 and a 1 much longer. It'll probably go from a 4 to a 3 pretty quickly, and then from a 3 to a 2, and then it'll be a 2 all the way up to Baton Rouge where it'll be a 1.
And then this is not anywhere near the size of what a Katrina was, but if this could be a more powerful storm and landfall than Katrina was.
Yeah, let me talk about that really quick. Thanks for mentioning that, Eric. Katrina was a Cat 5 a day before landfall. This was not a Category 5 a day before landfall. Oftentimes when you're talking about storm surge, and with Katrina we saw storm surge on the Mississippi coast and parts of our area 25, 30 plus feet. The reason for that is because Katrina was a Cat 5. It went through an eye wall replacement cycle and the wind field was able to expand. And a bigger wind field is going to be able to push more water. This has not had the ability to do that. So this wind field with this one is far smaller with Katrina. It's far smaller than Katrina's wind field, but this could come in with much stronger winds than Katrina. So storm surge is still going to be significant here, but you got to look at more than just the category when you're talking about surge here. Oftentimes it's the structure of the storm, it's the speed of the storm, and in this case, the structure of the wind field is much smaller than that of Katrina.
And the other difference, Katrina, we were on the west side of that storm. It made a jog to the east early Monday morning when it hit 16 years ago. This one will be on the strong side no matter where it comes in.
Yeah, the problem for New Orleans and Katrina was it went right here, right? And what did that do? When we were on that western side of that eye wall, we had winds just hammering down here into New Orleans. We're not going to have that with Ida. Ida's going to go to our east, which means our winds are going to constantly either stay out of the southeast or the east, and by tomorrow they'll be out of the south as it wraps up into it. So we're never really going to have a wind pounding down onto the New Orleans area. Now on the North Shore you will have a strong wind tomorrow out of the south, and on the western side of the lake, lower Tangi south of 22 and over into Lake Maurepas, St. John, Eric, they're going to have that strong wind funneling into this area all day long. So storm surge could be more significant over here.
And the other problem, the more it wobbles east, if it does, even if it doesn't, the storm surge coming up the Wrigley's into the lake, that's going to be a lot of water.
It is. We're forecasting 8 to 12 feet in Lake Bourne going into the Wrigley's, and then we have it to 5 to 8 feet in the lake right now. That's a lot of water. It's going to come on up, and we hope people out here evacuated that are not in the levee protection system. And you know, we've heard that some people did not evacuate down in Grand Isle. So
That was a mistake. Yeah. All right, Sheba.
Thank you very much. We want to get an update on conditions in Plaquemines Parish this morning. Joining us now is the Director of Emergency Preparedness there, Patrick Harvey. Thank you so much for being with us, Patrick. How are things going?
So far, we're calm before the storm here in the Belle Chase area. Lower part of the parish is starting to see those feeder bands coming in. We're getting some here in the upper part as well. Getting wind gusts down in the Buras area, around 40 miles an hour. And, the conditions are going to just deteriorate throughout the day for us.
Definitely.
The Hurricane Center increased the storm surge value, as y'all were mentioning, up 12 to 16 feet from the mouth of the river going west. So hopefully our residents heeded our warnings throughout the past couple of days to please get out of here, in those mandatory evacuation zones.
And let me ask you this: if it does wobble to the east a bit, and it could make landfall in Plaquemines Parish, and that would be devastating.
That's correct. We haven't had, as y'all previously mentioned, Hurricane Katrina. That eye crossed over the Buras and Empire area. Everything was, was just devastating. Nothing was left. And anywhere Ida is going to hit is going to be similar effects.
And Katrina came over your parish as a Cat 3 when it finally hit. This looks like it'll be a Cat 4, and it is a big difference.
Yes, it is. It just strengthened overnight, and we've been saying that. I've been talking to Ken Graham at the National Hurricane Center, and also my partners at the National Weather Service, and it's doing what it's predicted. Strengthened as it came across the Gulf. Those warm waters. It blew up in size yesterday, and then we had it redefined a little bit overnight, and just it's going to be devastating over the next 24 hours in southeast Louisiana.
And you and other officials there have been telling people, get out if you can. Did people heed those warnings? Did you find most people evacuated?
In the mandatory evacuation areas, it seems like most of them have. We still have some residents up here in the Belle Chase area where we did the voluntary evacuation, but I believe a majority, of our residents heeded that warning. We just, overnight we haven't gotten any phone calls to, help people, get out of their homes or anything in the lower portion of the parish. And so far, hopefully, whoever's still in their residence, please just go ahead and hunker down, as we all say, and we're going to ride it out and hope for the best.
Yeah, and because the shape of Plaquemines Parish, you guys get it coming and going on a storm, depending on what that track comes in. Your levee system is a little bit different than in most parishes. Talk a little about that.
That's correct. We have hurricane, the risk reduction system that runs from the Oakville area and covers the Belle Chase area, and then the risk reduction system's not on the east bank, as we've seen in Hurricane Isaac. But our levees, say on the east bank, on the northern portion of the parish, and then the southern part of the east bank, they're running, 12, 13 feet. Some areas around 14, 15 feet on that backside, on the Gulf side. So, we expect them to get the water, on Highway 39 in that area between White Ditch and Phoenix on the east bank of, 8 to 12 feet. And then on our west bank, the levees, with the risk reduction system are good 15 plus feet, 16 feet. And then as you go down from from Oakville Floodgate south to the Alliance Refinery, that levee system is a 7 to 11 foot height levee. That's why we issued that mandatory evacuation on Friday afternoon. And then from Alliance to West Point Lahash, this is Highway 23. We're always talking about this. That levee system is 3 to 6 feet, and we're going to get some serious over top, and that's that Myrtle Grove area, the Alliance area, Point Celeste area. So there's going to be flooding down there, and it's going to, cut the northern end from the southern end of the parish. So any resident that's down there, they're going to be stuck for a good while.
And quickly, do you have any idea just how many people actually evacuated? How many people are still down there, or you just don't know?
There's some people down there. I haven't talked to the sheriff's office. They've been down there all night just to get an idea who's still moving around and stuff. But I would say there's still going to be a handful or so of people that decide to just ride it out down there. Unfortunately, so,
Sure. We spoke with Jefferson Parish earlier. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Chief.
We were just saying we spoke with Jefferson Parish's president earlier, Cynthia Lee Shang, and she said they were already coordinating rescue efforts to be prepared after this storm passes. I know you were just mentioning some of the folks who stayed, how they're going to have to, just stay in place until this is over. Have you guys started coordinating efforts to rescue people who will need help after this passes?
We have our boats ready to go whenever, once everything calms down. We're familiar with it. Hurricane Katrina, we did boat rescues down on the southern part of the parish and also on the east bank. And Hurricane Isaac, they issued a mandatory evacuation for the east bank of the parish. And, they had 600 rescues that they did at that time. People didn't heed the warning, and we had to find shelter for here in Belchase for those 600 residents. And unfortunately, we had 2 deaths in Hurricane Isaac due to the storm surge, flooding and stuff. And then Hurricane Katrina, we had it was just under, I think, 10 deaths or so for residents that stayed for Katrina. So hopefully people listen to us. We've been telling them that, but now's the time. Here it is on us right now.
We're seeing those impacts, definitely.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and your biggest concern at this point, I know we talked about that storm surge. Is that the biggest concern?
Right now, but it's going to be the heavy rainfall that we're going to get, the winds. Speaking to Kendall Graham a little bit ago, we're going to get 100+ mile-an-hour winds here in the Belchase
area. If you get that kind of wind, that's going to tear places apart.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. It's going to be a constant tropical storm force wind. So you're going to have 40-50 mile-an-hour winds the whole day, and then once you start getting the gusts, it's just going to be devastating. That's just constant pounding on houses and everything. The electricity, it's going to go out. It's going to be out for several weeks. With this, and people don't realize how much it impacts the water system, the sewage system, your phones, cable, internet, all that stuff. You rely upon is based off of electricity. So it's going to be interesting. The heavy rainfall we're going to be getting as well. So.
Yeah, it's all the above with you guys. All right, thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Patrick Harvey with Plaquemines Parish, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank y'all very much. Y'all take care.
All right, Duke Carter is in St. Bernard and is at the EOC right now.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Yeah, we are here in St. Bernard Parish. We're in the EOC, just trying to figure out exactly how parish leaders are keeping people safe, especially as we know Hurricane Ida is slowly making her way closer to the southeast Louisiana area. And so, again, we've just been talking with Guy McInnes, Parish President Guy McInnes, earlier this morning outside of the parish center here in St. Bernard Parish. And he says that they're going out and about just to make sure that those low-lying areas are not overflowing with water at this time, which is good news. And so we caught up with Parish President Guy McInnes earlier, right before he left, before checking in the area. Take a listen to what he had to say.
Go out and assess and make sure everything's buttoned up. Today's going to be a tough day. We're already starting to receive these winds, and in a few hours we're going to have some tropical storm winds. So we want to make sure we get out and assess and see what's going on. Make sure we don't have any flooded areas now before the storm, and see what's going on outside of the levee system. We're worried about that storm surge, when it's going to get here. So we're trying to get a good assessment of things in St. Bernard Parish so that we can get in our EOC and make sure we can manage it from there.
Here in the EOC with the boss man, just monitoring the situation, Mr. Ram. Good morning, sir. Can you give us a status update on what exactly we're experiencing here in St. Bernard Parish?
Well, right now we're having gusts up in the upper part of St. Bernard and Chalmette area, 25, 27 miles an hour. Down in Hopedale, those areas getting up in the mid-30s.
Okay.
So by daylight, we should be experiencing tropical storm force winds, which are 20, 39 and above. And by mid-morning, sustained tropical storm force winds and just to chill ready for the rest of the day.
Talk to us about, like, are y'all planning any emergency operations for people beyond the levee protection system, or pretty much everyone took heed to the warning?
Well, a lot of people outside the levee system, they've been there forever. They live there. They know what happens. They go through the same thing every year. They know the water comes up. They come inside, but we have search and rescue assets pre-stationed by the fire department. And we also have some Air National Guard search and rescue high water vehicles, Humvees, boats, and personnel stays in the parish just in case we need it.
Got it. But as of right now, though, everything is best as it is right now.
It's as good as it can be right now. We're just sitting back waiting for see what happens, and then we'll react and respond to whatever we need to do.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. We'll toss it back to you. Thank you. Toss it back to you in studio.
All right, Duke, thank you very much for those updates. We want to go over to Doug Mouton now. He is in Hammond, and take a look at the conditions there. A lot of the areas we checked in, they're starting to see some rain. Have you seen any rain yet, Doug?
No, not yet, Sheba. Of course, we're significantly north of where Duke is in Hammond. I will say this, the air was much muggier a couple hours ago. It is not, and we're getting a little bit of a breeze, but we are not seeing any outer bands here in Hammond yet. The one interesting thing is, as we've talked about people evacuating, is I think a lot of people have made the late decision to evacuate. Adam Ney, the photographer that I'm working with, he's our sports photographer. Adam's parents evacuated Metairie about 4 a.m. My sister Judy evacuated Metairie about 2:30 a.m. And we hung out at the Shell gas station for a while, and we caught several people gassing up, some to gas up to stay, and then some to gas up to leave, including the Hong family, who actually waited. Seeing all the traffic reports, they decided to wait and evacuate overnight. Let's hear from them.
All right, Doug, apparently we don't have that sound. Anyway, it has been quite a night. I know I came into the airport yesterday.
I saw you posted that picture of how many people were in the airport.
It was amazing. I've never seen the security lines backed up that far, all the way to the next level.
Yeah.
And so many people trying to get out. Now, they flew me back in a big 757, and they're bringing a lot of bigger planes in that don't normally fly on these kind of routes, because they were trying to get as many people as they could out. I was on a plane with some doctors and other medical staff who were working with Oxnard, and they were saying that they were being called back. They had been working remotely for some time, and the hospital was calling them back.
Yeah, and of course, all flights in and out of MSY have been canceled for today. Several were canceled yesterday evening, so a lot of those people who were trying to make it out, it really was just too late.
Yeah, and when you saw that mass of people, it just, you were just thinking, there's no way all these people can get out. And, you know, you should have gone earlier if you could have. You know,
it was kind of the same way watching the interstates. I mean, the traffic was crazy.
And I saw some of your posts. I don't know what people are telling you. I mean, so many people are asking me, should I stay or should I leave? And I said, if you have no reason to stay, why would you stay?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's too late now, but I definitely posted that yesterday. Yeah. Yes, same thing. I said, they try to follow us sometimes because they watch us. And I said, listen, we stay for work, and WWL is going to take care of us. If I could leave, if I had a choice, we weren't working here, I would be gone. So hopefully a lot of people took that advice and left.
Yeah, it was the same way in Katrina, you know, begging and pleading with people to leave, and they just didn't. All right, let's take a quick break, and we'll be back with more of our coverage of Ida after this.
From WWL-TV, this is continuing coverage of Hurricane Ida.
Welcome back to our continuing coverage of Hurricane Ida. We're tracking this storm as it approaches the region.
Yeah, and if you're just joining us, you went to bed. It was a Category 2. It is now a strong Category 4. And let's get right over to Jade and a look at what you need to know this morning.
Well, good morning, Eric, and good morning, Sheba, and good morning to everyone. Here is a look at what you need to know ahead of Ida. We are getting new footage of what Hurricane Ida looks like from space. As you can see, this storm is huge. It is taking up a good portion of the Gulf. Ida strengthened into a Category 4 hurricane earlier this morning, and it's expected to make landfall later today. FEMA's Public Affairs Director and spokesperson has tweeted this message to the people of Louisiana. It reads, quote, "Louisiana, we have commodities, equipment, and personnel being pre-positioned and ready to be rapidly deployed. 1 million meals, 1.6 million liters of water, and 90 generators are on the way to help people and communities in the path of Hurricane Ida." President Biden has already approved emergency disaster declarations for Louisiana and Mississippi. And remember, you can get more updates along with live interactive radar on our WWL TV app. It is free to download.
All right. Thank you very much, Dave. We've been continuing updates on the storm. The last one came at 5 a.m. and we learned, Eric, that this storm is even stronger.
Yeah, it is a massive storm, a big storm, just as the Weather Service had predicted, the National Hurricane Center predicted. This thing is a Category 4. Hopefully it will stay at this and never get any worse than this.
That's right. All right. We want to check in on the conditions in Lafitte. Let's get to our Asha Staples. She's there live now. Asha?
Good morning. Luckily, every time we seem to come on air, the rain just stops, but it was just pouring down a few minutes ago. But we are here. Things are pretty calm at the moment until we get that next band of rain in the area. But you can see winds are pretty calm as well. Nothing too crazy. The streets are wet, of course, and the streets are pretty clear as far as traffic. We have seen some police presence kind of circling the area, seeming to be monitoring things. But for the most part, things are looking pretty good at the moment. A lot of folks were actually debating about staying or leaving, just like across our area, and kind of too late to make the decision to try to leave. But for those who are riding it out, we definitely are with you and hope that you're staying safe. There is currently a mandatory evacuation that was in place actually outside of the levee protection area. So again, if you are kind of on the fence of leaving your home right now, is probably the best time to go ahead and do so. But we did hear from multiple Jefferson Parish officials throughout the last couple of days about the possibility and what they can expect from Hurricane Ida when it does reach our area. And again, they say that they've been preparing for whatever the storm may bring. Crews, they have been working and will continue to try to monitor the catch basins. They've been cleaning them out to make sure that the drainage will be able to move that water out when we do start to get that heavy rain. Of course, like many other areas, they're expecting a lot of wind, rain, possible flooding in spots, power outages, and are of course telling people that if they can leave, they should do so. And the emergency operations centers, they're also monitoring nursing homes. Entergy and other departments have pre-stage equipment for during and after the storm. And again, this is something that we have to just kind of wait, watch, and see what's going to exactly happen. But of course, we do know that flooding outages are something that we have planned for and just waiting for it all to kind of happen. But for right now, things are pretty calm. We are getting a little bit of a drizzle coming up again, but the winds are pretty calm for the most part, and that rain is very light and moderate at this point. But for now, we're going to send it back to you guys and check back in with you as things start to change.
All right, thanks, Asha. That light rain is a pleasant thing to see right now. Right now, they're taking a live look at Bourbon Street. We've been checking in there. Things, of course, nice and quiet as people get in place, as Mayor LaToya Cantrell wanted people to do hours ago. So it looks like people are actually doing that.
Well, it is 5:30 on a Sunday morning, so on regular days, yeah. We've seen this site during COVID when it's like this. There is rain outside. Let's get over to Michelle for the folks just joining us now. This is a Category 4 storm, Michelle. Is there anything right now that you see that could intensify this thing more?
It's a possibility. I mean, it's still over very warm water, but again, the eye is extremely impressive here, Eric. Again, as it continues to churn over the very warm water, at this point, we're pretty confident in the forecast path of this system here. There's a strong possibility that it may jog a bit to the east, to the west. Of course, if it jogs to the west, the wind will be less intense, and of course it will take those higher surge values with it out to the west. And we'll go over all that in just a moment, and we'll continuously get updates hourly from this system here, from the National Hurricane Center. So as of 5 o'clock this morning, it is a strong Category 4 hurricane, a major storm heading towards us. And we're looking at winds of 145 miles per hour, but notice the wind gusts, 165 miles per hour. That is extremely devastating. It's moving at a good rate to the northwest at 15 miles per hour. Now the placement of the center of the storm here, it is about 80 miles south-southeast of Grand Isle. So we are expecting landfall later on this afternoon around noon, 1 o'clock, again as a major storm. As we take a look at the forecast path here, here's what I'm talking about. So here's the National Hurricane Center projected path. You see that red line, and there's that forecast cone. It is continuing to shrink. So again, we are anticipating a bit, it could potentially jog to the east and jog to the west, again, as we get those current updates, but already starting to see those heavy rain bands pushing in along our coastal areas, and that will be the setup throughout the rest of the day, where the heavy tropical downpours, it will come in waves, but we are looking at a wet day, and I do expect this system to slow down a touch when it heads on land, and it will rapidly weaken. So as we take a look at the latest radar scan, you can see the heavy rain now approaching Slidell, starting to see those tropical downpours north of New Orleans, now heading into Houma. We're looking at light showers along the coastline, but of course we're going to see those tropical downpours continuing to push onshore, but the winds are starting to pick up across the area. There's that eye, extremely impressive here. Last time I measured it is about 20 miles in diameter. And again, you can see the wraparound rain bands. That's where you'll find the strongest winds around that eye wall. Of course, if that eye wall is closer to New Orleans, that's where we're going to see the intense winds. As I mentioned before, if it jogs to the west, the winds will be less intense. I'm not saying we're not going to see strong winds. We are going to see strong winds, but it will be less intense. So again, the latest forecast path here, when we're looking in terms of timing, it is expected to make landfall as a Category 4 hurricane, packing winds of 145 miles per hour. And there is a chance it could continue to strengthen. Again, that's on the table. But as of right now, even if it does strengthen into a Category 5 hurricane, we're still looking at extensive impacts across the areas here along southeast Louisiana, and then extending into the North Shore. So again, as this system moves on land, it is going to rapidly weaken, and we're looking at tropical downpours, heavy rain throughout the rest of the day. So we're looking at a long duration of rain. We're going to see some higher rain totals in a few spots, and then when that's coupled with the storm surge, we're looking at flash flooding across the area. That's what we're anticipating. And then as we head into Monday afternoon, early Tuesday morning, that system will be well away from us, and then we'll start seeing our weather here in the viewing area start to gradually improve. Now, to take a look at the winds and wind gusts at the moment, they're really cranking up here. Bureau's 24 mile per hour sustained winds. Notice the wind gusts, almost 50 miles per hour. Grand Isle, those winds are continuing to increase in that area. And then as we head to the lakefront, we have sustained winds at 24 miles per hour with higher wind gusts. And again, those winds will continue to intensify as the center of the storm makes landfall. So taking a look at the wind field here, I do expect the wind field to expand just a bit, and you can see the reds here. As I mentioned before, we're finding you'll find the strongest winds around that eye wall, and the strongest winds will extend about 40-50 miles out of that eye wall, and then we're looking at tropical storm force winds about 140 miles per hour miles from the center of the storm. So nonetheless, we are looking at a powerful hurricane. Those strong, significant winds will cause structural, also tree damage. We're also anticipating widespread power outages, again, as those winds continue to crank up. As we look at the time frame here, later on this afternoon, excuse me, or later on this evening, the winds will still remain pretty strong as the system moves inland. So we're looking at strong winds to continue throughout the rest of the day, also that heavy rain. And then as we head into tomorrow morning, still going to be breezy in a few spots. Many areas could potentially see those tropical storm force winds continue throughout much of tomorrow morning and tomorrow afternoon. Another really great graphic here, just to kind of give you a perspective. Areas that are highlighted in that white, we'll see wind speeds between 110 to 130 miles per hour. Again, that is sustained. When you factor in the wind gusts, some areas might see 140, 145 miles per hour, but the strongest wind gusts will be along the coast. That's where we'll see the storm surge.
And Michelle, if I can ask one question,
Sure.
when you talk about the intensity of a storm like this, and we make the obvious comparisons because it's coming in on the same day of the 16th anniversary of Katrina. Katrina was a much bigger storm. It was just, it was spread out along the entire Gulf. It filled the entire Gulf, pretty much. This one is different, but it's going to land with a lot more intensity, and that's what you're kind of concerned about right now.
Oh, definitely. I was looking at some history. I was trying to find a storm that made landfall along southeast Louisiana. I couldn't find one, so this could potentially be
with this kind of intensity.
Yeah, with this type of intensity, and also Hurricane Katrina, when it made landfall, it took a different path because I believe it made landfall near Triumph.
Well, it made a jog to the east,
yes,
and then went through Plaquemines Parish, and then up, and then we were on the city itself was on the weaker side of the storm.
There you go. But the thing about Hurricane Katrina is that it was a Category 5 hurricane, and it sat over the Gulf of Mexico, continuing to churn up that water.
Right.
So that's why the storm surge was so extensive, and then the levee protection system just couldn't handle that amount of storm surge. Thankfully, things have improved.
And we are hoping history, I mean, you don't wish this on anybody, but if this would take a jog toward the east, it would be much more devastating for New Orleans.
That's right, because we're going to be closer to that eye wall, and that's where the intense winds are located. Nonetheless, Eric, even if this system moves to the east or the west, we're still going to be on the wetter side of the system. So then the water becomes a concern because you have the storm surge, and then you have that heavy tropical rain coupled with that. So, and the lakes are going to rise as well as the rivers, and then you have all that rain on top of it. It's going to take some time for all of that water to drain out. So we are extremely concerned about the water associated with Hurricane Ida.
Yeah, and as we mentioned before, that wind is going to just pound water into Lake Pontchartrain.
Exactly right, and especially those low-lying areas around the lake really need to pay attention to what's going on, because I do anticipate that water to rise pretty fast, especially when those winds pick up, pushing in all that water. So again, as I mentioned before, this is a really good graphic just to give you an idea of what we're anticipating here in terms of wind speeds. And many areas will see 100+ winds when the center of the storm moves inland. And because the system is so strong, it is going to hold on to its hurricane status, potentially not a 4 or 3, maybe a 2 as it gets closer to Baton Rouge, but nonetheless, it's still going to be a very strong storm with those winds and also all the rain associated with that system. I do want to mention as well that the Storm Prediction Center has issued a level 2, a slight risk for our entire viewing area. And something that we haven't really talked about is when the system or when Ida makes landfall, those outer bands, we could see a few spin-ups. We could potentially see some tornadoes develop across the area too. So, I mean, that's another factor we have to take account. So I do want to go over parish by parish, just so you have an idea what to expect where you live. So as we look at the North Shore, rainfall between 6 to 10 inches of rain. Of course, we could see locally higher amounts. Winds between 70 to 80 miles per hour with stronger wind gusts up to 110. And then storm surge along Lake Pontchartrain, we're looking at between 5 to 8 feet. As we take a look at the Metro New Orleans area, 6 to 10 inches of rain. Of course, locally higher amounts are expected in a few spots. Winds between 90 to 110 mile per hour winds with wind gusts up to 120. And then, of course, storm surge 5 to 8. And then along the lakes there, Lake Bourne may see between 7 to 11 feet. River parishes I'm pretty concerned about as well, because many of y'all will see between 5 to 10 inches of rainfall, and then we're looking at wind speeds, or wind gusts rather, up to 130 miles per hour. So I am expecting tree damage, structural damages in a few areas. So again, keep that in mind, for these areas. And of course, we'll take a deeper look at all of your parishes coming up in a bit.
All right, Michelle, thank you very much. We want to take a live look in Houma right now. We've been talking about the storm making impacts there. This is Highway 57, and as we said, we're expecting these impacts closer to noon, even for our coastal areas. So right now, the worst that we've seen is really some rain. We saw some heavy winds when you get close to the lakefront, which is expected back on the South Shore. But again, this is a live look in Houma this morning, and right now, it's just drizzling.
And if the storm keeps on its same track, there's going to be a whole different scene in Houma. Houma is going to take a direct hit. If it stays on this track, it's going to be terrible there. I've got a friend down in Houma I was just texting with. He does have wind indicators on his boat, stuff like that. He said he will talk to us if and when that storm does hit there. All right, we're talking about the water pounding the lake. A lot of that's going to go to the west side of the lake, around the Hammond area, Manchac, places like that. And that's where Doug Mouton is right now in Hammond.
Hey, Doug.
Yeah, hey, Eric, and I want to say this. You're talking about it from a historical perspective. I tell you, the storm to look back at is the Great Hurricane of 1915. This is before they had names, which entered as a Category 4 near Grand Isle, and it's the one that ripped apart the west side of Tangipahoa Parish, which is, I'm in Hammond now. Once we get some daylight, we're going to take a ride to that Napton, Frenier, Rudock area, which was wiped out by that hurricane of 1915. I think if you're talking about from a historical perspective, that's the one to maybe see how these tracks are similar. And that was one of the most destructive hurricanes in American history. We have seen people take this thing seriously in a way that maybe some other storms like the ones we had last year where you sort of knew it wasn't going to, you could see a whole different attitude towards this storm beginning about Friday. And I do think a lot of people made the decision to stay home, but then even changed their minds yesterday as Ida began taking those little wobbles east, which took us from maybe not so bad to right in the path. So we have seen a steady stream of people evacuating. Obviously, traffic was terrible all day yesterday, especially going west towards Houston. We also saw people gassing up and leaving in the middle of the night from here in Hammond, including the Hong family, who we caught up with. First of all, were you gonna stay until today?
No, our plans were to leave to Houston. We weren't sure how the hurricane will be. And then once we saw that it's going to be a Category 4, we were like, we got to go. We got to go.
And were you watching what the traffic situation was like today? Is that why you delayed?
Oh, yeah, for sure. We have family members that left earlier today, and they just got there. And
how many hours?
It was about 12, 13 hours. So it's pretty insane. Yeah, I know. So for us, leaving around this time, we were hoping that it died down, but as we saw on the GPS, it's still traffic.
It's still traffic when you get close to there.
Yeah,
right.
Close to there. It was about towards Beaumont. It's still trafficy over there.
So you guys made the decision at some point today, we're gonna go, but let's go at 3 a.m. when the traffic's still
Yeah, I just felt like that's the smart thing to do. Just go when people is either decided that they're gonna stay or I doubt there's a lot of people that's going around this time. So.
Or you hope so.
I hope so.
What is it about this storm that made you take it a little more seriously than the others we've had?
I was that person that said, oh, Category 1, Category 2, oh, we're just gonna stay. But this time around is like, it's Category 4. I don't want to deal with no electricity, no food, no gas, whatever. You could always prepare, but it's a big storm this time around. So we just decide we're just gonna go.
Yeah, and who can blame them? And I think a lot of people have made that decision in the middle of the night. We're seeing a consistent breeze here now. We have not seen any outer bands here in Hammond. Obviously, we expect that to change as the day moves on. We're going to catch up with Parish President Robbie Miller in a few minutes. And again, once we get some daylight, we're going to head to that west side of Lake Pontchartrain and see what that looks like. For now, reporting live in Tangipahoa Parish in Hammond, Doug Mouton, Eyewitness News. Eric.
All right, Doug, thank you very much.
All right, we want to get over to our Meg Ferris now. She's been in Orleans Parish. Meg, where are you now and what conditions are you seeing?
So what we did, Sheba, was we were out on the Lakeshore Drive around Canal Boulevard, and we started seeing a lot of lightning. And so we just said it wasn't safe, so we just came down more toward West End. We're still at Lake Pontchartrain, so we could get under one of these restaurant shelters or overhangs. As you can see, it's not making that much of a difference, but significantly since the last time we talked, the difference of the storm surge coming in and the wind buildup. Rick Neese is panning over right there by the lighthouse here at West End, and you can just see the waves just crashing up. I mean, it is, you can see it almost, minute by minute, water rising, water getting much more choppy, waves crashing, and of course the feeder bands, they're calm, and then as they come in, they're much stronger than the ones before. Eric was talking earlier about doctors being called back to Oxnard, and that reminds me of something that we need to tell people. Right now we're worried about the storm, but the emergency rooms are jam-packed, the ICUs, the hospitals are packed. In the last few weeks with the Delta variant, they've had to turn away people who have severe heart conditions and all that. So now's not the time to be getting up on a ladder or doing things to secure things where you could injure yourself, because the hospitals are full. I was thinking about that in the aftermath of the storm too. When you get out to clean, that's when a lot of the injuries happen. There's just not a lot of room and personnel to go to the hospital, so don't do anything that's not very, very secure. And Eric, also, I wanted to continue a conversation we were having earlier with Peyton. Is he around where he can hear a question I have for him, please?
It's on. Hey, I can hear you, Meg.
Okay, so Peyton, earlier about 1 o'clock, we were comparing what it felt like in your home with Zeta last October compared to what this could feel like. And then I heard you, of course, bring up the Katrina winds, and then I heard you bring up Betsy. Okay, I remember all of them. I remember what it felt like inside my home when I was a little girl, Betsy. So my question to you, and I know every storm is different, and we can't emphasize that enough, but in New Orleans, in Metro, what is the difference in the wind that we're going to feel from Betsy compared to Katrina, compared to Zeta, compared to what we could feel? Again, not when it's coming on shore and all that type of thing. What we may feel in the metro area with all compared to those storms in our homes.
I think Betsy is a good representation of perhaps what it could be like in the New Orleans metro, and even for the Bayou, for everyone really. It took a very similar path here, and the winds were about 140 miles per hour at landfall when Betsy moved on shore back in the 60s. So it could be a similar scenario. Of course, we didn't have the levee system we had back then, or that we have now, but wind-wise, you could be looking at something kind of similar here.
Okay, so what our homes will feel is what we felt during Betsy in the 60s, those same type of powerful winds.
Yeah.
So that's way more than Zeta and way more than Katrina, right?
Yeah, Katrina was a little bit more than Zeta. Zeta and Katrina still produced some significant winds, obviously, but Betsy came on shore down along the coast as a 140 mile per hour hurricane. So it was a Cat 4.
Okay. All right. Well, that's just what I wanted people to get a perspective on the winds. I know the surge is a little bit different because of it was a 5 and it came up at a different angle, and we have a better outflow canal system, but I was just curious about the winds. Okay. Well, that's it from here. Reporting live from the lakefront, Meg Farris, Eyewitness News. Back to you.
All right, Meg. Thank you.
And with the power outages that are inevitable with Hurricane Ida, it is important to know whether or not your food left in the refrigerator is still safe to eat.
Abby Larico tells us what you need to know.
When the storm wipes out the power, it can also clear out your food supply, especially anything in the fridge. So here are some ways to keep your cool. The FDA recommends do not open your fridge or freezer for as long as possible. The closed doors trap the cold air for up to 4 hours in your fridge and up to 48 hours in a full freezer. If you can, put dry or blocked ice into the fridge. 50 pounds of ice can keep a fridge cold for 2 days. Foods meant to be refrigerated need to be tossed out after 4 hours stored at 40 degrees or warmer, even less time when it's really hot. Think closer to 2 hours with the forecasted hot temperatures in the 80s. One way to track how warm is too warm, freeze a cup of water, put a quarter on top. Keep it in the freezer. If the cup melts down so the quarter sinks to the bottom, temps have risen too high to save your food. It's time to pitch it. Store all foods high and dry in case of flooding, and if there's any chance something has come into contact with floodwaters, don't eat it. Stay safe. I'm Abby Larico, Eyewitness News.
Yeah, there are so many factors we have to think about here. You do have people with food in the fridge, and of course, they're trying to figure out how long that will last and how long the power will be out if we lose it.
And again, when in doubt, do without. And the other thing, if you don't open the fridge, it'll stay for a little longer. The freezer the same way. And the one thing with a storm like this, if there are 140 mile an hour winds, it's going to do a lot of roof damage, a lot of structural damage. In a named storm, a lot of companies, insurance companies, some of the big ones, charge up to a 5% deductible. So, I mean, if you have your house insured for a couple of $100,000, that's like a $10,000 deductible.
Wow.
So if you have $9,000 in damage, that all comes out of your pocket.
Yeah, and the hard thing is now people are just trying to brace for the storm, survive the storm,
Yeah.
get through it. That is the sad part, though. Once this all clears up, we have to take a look at the damage and destruction left behind, and hopefully it's better than what we're imagining it'll be.
And again, I go back to a storm like Cindy, which was at the time a tropical storm right before Katrina. And it did so much damage, it knocked the power out of 250,000 people. On my way into work that morning, that was back in 2005, Claiborne was littered with debris and stuff like that. Lights were out all over the place. And it was a mess. And they finally upgraded that, I think a year or so later, to a Category 1 storm. But this is a Category 4.
Yeah, it
there
is a Category 4.
Huge difference. And Peyton's going to have some new information coming up about the pressure within that eye dropping, and it's
Which
dropping
means it's
significantly.
strengthening even more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a break, and we'll have more of our continuing coverage and that latest information from Peyton after the break.
From WWL-TV, this is continuing coverage of Hurricane Ida.
And good morning once again. Thank you for joining us for this 6 o'clock hour of our special coverage of Hurricane Ida, coming on the day, the 16th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. And the news we're getting right now is not good.
Yeah, we're getting the latest update on the storm, and we're learning that it's strengthening even more.
Let's get straight over to Peyton for the very latest.
Yeah, guys, honestly, it's shocking to believe how fast this thing is strengthening. Look at the current winds. This is still a Category 4, 150 mile per hour sustained winds now. A Category 5 is 157. This is close to becoming a Category 5 here. And look at our pressure, 935 millibars. I've never seen pressure drop so fast in a hurricane. It's happened, but I just can't think of any. And 75 miles south of Grand Isle at this point. So it's still moving northwest at 15. This thing is on the verge of becoming a Category 5 hurricane as it makes its way towards the north. Now, is it possible this continues to strengthen? It is. The trends we've seen since 1 a.m., it is just crazy how fast this thing has intensified as it's made its way towards the Louisiana coast. The track still brings it into parts of lower Terrebonne, lower Lafourche, and going over into lower Jefferson to near Plaquemines. Anywhere in here, landfall remains possible. The eye itself has been running just a hair to the north and northeast of it, so it's possible that the exact eye or the center of it tracks closer to Lafourche Parish, maybe even up in towards the Grand Isle area. This could be a strong Cat 4 on the verge of becoming a 5, making landfall in southeast Louisiana. We have never had a hurricane this strong, going back at least to the early 1900s, this strong making landfall. Betsy was 140 miles per hour. The great, that one that Doug was talking about was 145 miles per hour. This could very well be one of the strongest hurricanes we've ever experienced through parts of our area. Eric?
And explain just why that drop in millibar is so important for not just the intensity, but the depth of this storm.
Yeah, so I was just talking to you with this off air, and so as pressure drops, the winds are going to respond. As pressure is dropping, winds naturally pick up, low pressure here, and that high pressure in the air is just funneling down into this thing. Think of it as you're pulling down on a balloon and the water's rushing in. So the deeper it goes, the faster the water is going to go, and the faster the winds are going to go. Now, this interesting fact a meteorologist friend had posted, this is Ida's central pressure has dropped 50 millibars in 22 hours. That qualifies this as rapid deepening. Now, rapid deepening is more extensive than rapid intensifying. Now, rapid deepening with that pressure dropping, get this, only 11 hurricanes on record in the Atlantic have deepened at 50 millibars in 22 hours or faster.
And Peyton, quickly explain why that is so significant.
Because, well, one thing, it's nearly a Cat 5. 2, there's a big difference between a weakening hurricane at landfall and a strengthening hurricane at landfall. A strengthening hurricane at landfall is going to have a much bigger punch than a weakening one. It's ramping up all the way until landfall, and that is very possible with this storm as it continues to move towards the north and west. So at this point, we talked about this a couple days ago. People were saying, is a Cat 5 possible? We said it's not out of the question. And it's not. I mean, it's only 7 miles per hour off. And the way this thing has strengthened all the way since 1 a.m. when I came in, it was a Category 2, and then it was a 3, and then it was a 4 an hour later, and now it's a strong 4. This thing will likely continue to intensify as it makes its way towards our coastal areas.
And what are the chances that this thing could still move a little? We're talking about the wobbling. We know it's going to wobble back and forth, but when the winds get this strong, is that wind field expanding any around that eye?
Yeah, so the wind field's naturally expanding. It contracts and expands in a hurricane. One thing that could happen with this one, and this happens in really intense hurricanes, they go through these things called eye wall replacement cycles, and that's what happened to Katrina. So Katrina was a Cat 5, and remember it weakened. It went through an eye wall replacement cycle during that process, and that weakens it. And what it does is it allows that wind field to spread out, and then that eye has to contract again. So as you've seen ice skaters, they spin around, and when they bring their arms in, they go faster, right? So a hurricane's essentially the same. When the eye is bigger here and it's contracting, it's going to go faster and faster and faster. And then you'll get a new eye wall forming, and that's the replacement cycle. And then that new eye wall will be bigger, the winds will weaken just a little bit, and then it will contract back down and the winds will strengthen. I think we got a tornado warning or a tornado watch. I want to check on something real quick. Okay, we have a tornado watch. So we're going to be watching for that over the next, throughout today as possibly isolated tornadoes. So that watch will be in effect for the area today. So we'll be watching not only the hurricane conditions, but of course any of these bands could produce some spin.
And again, with the speed this thing is traveling right now, how much time does it have to intensify to a Cat 5 or change course any?
It's got about 5 to 6 more hours over water. It's running into our shallow waters. Now the waters out here are pretty shallow, right? As you go out, you're not into the deep ocean water. So it'll be interesting to see, do we get any upwelling? And upwelling is when an intense hurricane like this, that's moving at a fairly, it's not hauling, but it's not stalling. And it can upwell some water, that cooler water, and that can sometimes decrease or cap off the intensification process. It's possible it does that, but it's not a guarantee, and it's not doing it right now.
And are those waters warmer than some of the deeper water because it is shallow?
The surface, oh yeah, this water up here gets to the upper 80s to near 90 degrees.
And so that's not good either.
No, it's an immediate hot temperature, but you know, when you're talking about warm temperatures in the waters, you got to have great wind shear or low wind shear, not a lot of dry air, and we obviously don't have that. So that all coupled together is why we are seeing this, and we did expect it to intensify rapidly up until landfall. So this is all expected. It's just a little bit stronger than what we were thinking it was going to do.
And Payne, you said a moment ago, we've never had a storm this strong make landfall in Louisiana, which I think is such a strong statement from a place that has seen Katrinas and Betsy's. Meg was just naming some of the big storms that she's been through. Everybody's looking for a comparison. So what is the strongest storm we've had make landfall?
In Louisiana, it was Laura last year, actually. It was 150, so it was the same as what it's at right now. In our area, going back to at least, off the top of my head, I can't think of what we've had two 1850 hurricanes that were pretty significant, but I can't think of the names or the speeds. But going back to at least the 1915 that Doug was mentioning, the Great Hurricane of 1915, took a similar path as Ida. Betsy also is going to take, or this is taking a similar path as Betsy. Betsy was a Cat 4, but it was 140 miles an hour at landfall.
Wow.
The 1915 one, I believe, was 145 miles per hour at landfall. So we have never had, at least in going back to the 1900s, a 150 plus mile per hour hurricane, and we've actually never had a Category 5 make landfall in Louisiana.
No.
Wow.
Camille made landfall in Mississippi, but it was in Bay St. Louis, Waveland, so it didn't classify as here. And it kind of skirted, the eye wall of Camille skirted down here towards Buras, but the actual eye did not make landfall, the center of it.
And I know you don't expect it to shift very much, if at all, before it makes landfall, but I know you were also surprised that the speed is up to 150 so fast.
Yeah.
Would that help shift it at all?
The speed, sometimes, you know, the speed of these things in the long term, we watch the strength and what that's going to do to the steering pattern. This thing could curve a little bit sooner. That is certainly possible. We've seen that with hurricanes in the past. But right now, if you look at our trends, it's still running right on the right side. So I think it's headed more towards Lafourche and Lower Jefferson. It may wobble though, and we talk about these wobbles. You know, wobbles are important at this point. They're not important when you're talking about the forecast 5 days out because we can't detect the wobbles. But when you get to this point, you really got to watch and see how this thing winds its way towards the coast. It could still make landfall near Plaquemines, Lower Jefferson, Grand Isle. Lafourche is here, Port Fourchon. Port Fourchon's right dead line in the center of it right there. And then so is Houma in the current forecast.
And Peyton, when we talk about it intensifying like this, does that mean a bigger storm surge? Will the storm surge estimates increase because of this?
Yeah, they would. Now, the storm surge is dependent on a couple different things. It has to do with about 3 different factors, really. The 2 we're watching are the intensity, how fast the winds are, but the structure of the wind field. Eric, we were talking earlier about why Katrina was such a devastating storm with surge, but it was only it was a Category 3 at landfall.
Yeah, and it was east of us. We were on the west side.
Yeah, it's because the wind field was giant. It was almost, I think, double of what we got here. And that's because it was a giant Category 5 in the Gulf of Mexico, and that wind field just had so much time to grow. This wind field, it's a decent wind field, but it's not nearly the size of Katrina. So the bigger the wind field, the more water it can push, but the stronger the winds, also the more water it can push. So it kind of is a trade-off there, but more so, the stronger the winds get, the storm surge will go up. That's why we've seen our estimates increase to 16 feet.
And when you talk about the intensity of this wind, as you said, we've never had a Cat 5 hit Louisiana. When you've got, even if it stays a strong hurricane or a strong Category 4 at 150 mile an hour, sustained winds, that just wreaks havoc on everything in its path.
Yeah, it does. And you know, the strongest winds, this 150, maybe it ends up being 155, that would still be a Cat 4. Or your gusts, which are 165 to 170, that's going to be near the center of the storm on the eastern eye wall here as it makes landfall. So the most intense part is going to be, I mean, not everyone's going to see 150 mile an hour winds. That will decrease pretty quickly, but there is a good chance a lot of our area does see over 100, maybe 120 mile per hour wind gusts. So you got to prepare for that. I hope you've prepared for it because you're basically out of time at this point, Eric.
All right, thank you very much, Peyton.
All right, some scary updates there as we're about 6 hours from landfall on the storm, and we continue to track updates from across the region as the storm gets closer.
Yeah, as we said, Ida is now a Category 4 storm, a strong 4. Its winds up to 150 miles an hour, just 7 miles an hour away from being a Cat 5, Leslie.
And let's get over to Jade Cunningham now with some things we need to know at this hour.
Well, here's a look at what you need to know ahead of the storm. The time to evacuate is over. If you're still in southeast Louisiana this morning, you need to shelter in place for the foreseeable future. Officials are stressing for people to stay inside during and after the storm. Down power lines and other issues can make it dangerous to leave. Let the city and other responders assess the damage first. Today is the 16th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, and Mayor LaToya Cantrell says New Orleans is much better prepared to handle the storm now than it was 16 years ago. In a Facebook post, Cantrell noted more than $14 billion worth of investments have been made to the levee protection system. She also says people in New Orleans are safer than they have ever been before. And with Hurricane Ida intensifying to a Category 4, a strong Category 4, you can expect significant power outages that may last weeks. Energy says they are mobilizing a storm team of approximately 16,000 members to address power outages from Ida. Based on historical restoration times, customers in the direct path of a storm as intense as Ida could experience outages for more than 3 weeks. Guys?
All right, Jade, thank you very much. We want to get back over to our Danny Monteverde now and check in with him.
He's down in Terrebonne Parish. And Danny, what are you seeing down there?
Hey, Eric. Hey, Sheba. Good morning. We are in Terrebonne Parish. We're in Gray, Louisiana, to be precise, at the Terrebonne Emergency Operations Center. And what we're looking at right now, it's just kind of a light rain so far. The wind kind of comes and goes, and the rain has been a little heavier at times, but nothing too severe at this point. And we are here with Mark Black, who's the spokesman for the Parish Emergency Operations Center. How are you feeling so far?
Well, feeling very good right now, Danny, but it's going to pick up. Things are going to get worse during the day based on what we've seen in terms of projections, but, you know, all we can do is just, you know, wait it out for right now. I really have nothing, we have no reports coming in from anywhere down the bayou, so I can't share anything with you because I don't have it right now.
And but right now, again, if someone is watching this, we're starting to get to the earliest points of daylight. I guess the message is don't let your guard down. It may not be a lot right now, but as the day goes on, this is going to change.
Yes, it will. This is, you can be lulled into perhaps a false sense of security based on what's going on right now, but it will get worse throughout the day, more wind, more rain. So please don't let your guard down.
And you and I spoke earlier this morning. You said really it's not the water that's a concern for you guys, it's the wind. And talk a little bit about why that is.
Well, with a Cat 4 wind range, we expect there'll be a lot of damage down trees, roofs, shingles, things like that, perhaps boats tossed about. That's where our real concern is right now with the wind. So we're hoping that, we're hoping the surge is not that great, and based on the track we've seen, that we may be okay on the surge.
And I was going to mention the track too, because from what I've seen and so far, it looks like it has shifted a little bit east, if I'm getting the latest information correct. You never want to see it go anywhere. We were talking before, the best place it can go is away, but for Terrebonne Parish in particular, if it does shift east, What does that mean for you guys here in Terrebonne?
Well, it means that the storm surge should not be as great as it was originally projected, which was around 15 feet, which would have given us some severe problems.
And again, for the people here in Terrebonne, well, I guess in theory, there shouldn't be anyone here in Terrebonne. You guys issued the evacuation order. And again, if anyone stayed, they're supposed to be indoors.
That's correct. And I'm sure at some point law enforcement will be off the streets, but right now they're out and about making sure that if you have to travel, you may be stopped. If it's legitimate, I'm sure law enforcement will allow you to proceed.
But by and large, this is not the day to get out and do things. It's the day to stay home, and it's going to be a long day for a lot of people, but staying home is the safest thing to do right now.
That's absolutely correct. It will be a long day for us over here at the EOC, that's for sure.
All right, well, Mark Black, the spokesman for the EOC here in Terrebonne Parish, thanks for the time. And again, that is the latest here live in Terrebonne Parish this morning. Again, we're looking at, actually, in this time we've been talking to Mart, the rain looks like it's slacked up just a little bit. But again, the big message is don't let that lull you into a false sense of security. As we've heard ad nauseum, unfortunately, over the past about 24 hours or so, it seems, things are going to get bad in the next little bit, and just, do what you can to stay safe. That is the latest for now. Reporting live in Terrebonne Parish, Danny Monteverde, Eyewitness News.
Danny, thank you very much. We want to take a look at what's happening right now. We're keeping a close eye on Houma, of course, the Bayou parishes. They'll take the brunt of it. Not exactly sure where Hurricane Ida, that is a Category 4 with 150 mile per hour sustained winds, where it'll make landfall. But once again, we are looking at Houma right now.
And let's switch over to the western part of the state to Lake Charles. And you can see the Interstate 10 there, people still going, trying to get out of this danger area. Lake Charles, poor Lake Charles, just last year was a horrific year for them for hurricanes. And the traffic obviously is lightened up now, but they are hoping against all hope that this thing does not go any farther west, because they have had so much problems. But no matter where it goes, we're all going to feel some of it. I mean, this is a big storm.
Traffic looks significantly better there, Eric. We were looking at this a couple of hours ago, and people were still at a standstill. Of course, these were the folks, most of them going to west, to Texas, towards the Houston
places
area.
like that. And and then it was, yesterday it was also going east. I have a lot of friends who were texting me now from Florida, and they had gotten out to Pensacola, Destin, Panama City.
Did it take them
like
just as long as the folks going west?
It depended on when they left.
Sure, right.
Some of them, I saw some of the when Katie and Sharice were on yesterday, they were showing shots of the twin spans going to Slidell, and it was just back-to-back traffic going east, nothing coming west. And then, like when I came in yesterday on that flight, it was a very empty flight, but it was a big plane. It was a 757. They were bringing bigger planes in to try and get as many people out as they could. Because, I mean, the airlines have had a rough time with cancellations, rescheduling. There's so much on account of COVID. All of a sudden, you were seeing packed planes, packed airports. Then there were reports that it had dropped off a bit because people were getting more worried about traveling during the surge. And then yesterday, to see that scene at Armstrong International Airport.
That's right. You sent those pictures in, and there was absolutely no social distancing. It was
there was no way to.
And absolutely. But on the height of the pandemic, and you throw in a hurricane, it just really.
Well, and a lot of times it is tough to get through security anyway. Even on a normal day, this was a very abnormal day.
Sure.
I mean, there was nobody coming into the airport to speak. But boy, people were trying to get out in droves, and that line that went all the way up the stairs
I've never
to the
seen that.
next level just to get through security.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. And then, of course, we were watching the interstates going west. We had people taking 12 hours to get to Houston, Texas. We have some of our staff members' families still trying to make it to Texas this morning. So, of course, we're wishing them the best. And then yesterday, everyone was upset, saying, where's contraflow? They're returning things political. And a lot of people saying, listen, our officials said it was just too late for that. They did not have time to execute that plan.
And the thing that I've gotten so irritated with friends, and I remember doing the same thing in Katrina 16 years ago, trying to get people to say, look, you do not need to stay. And after a while, especially with Katrina, because Katrina was a Cat 5, it looked like it was coming straight for us. And I said, there are only two kinds of people to stay. People who have to and stupid people. If you don't have to stay, don't. I mean, clearly there are people who couldn't make it out. They had no way to get out.
and that's who you worry about the most, the people who don't have transportation,
and they have
who don't have a
choice.
plan for pets, who don't have money to leave. You do feel terrible for them because now this storm is very close and they're going to feel the impacts of it.
But for people who have the means, why would you stay when there's a storm like this? I don't let my family stay.
No, my family's not here either.
And Eric, how are you feeling about this one? Because we talked to Meg, we talked to Doug, who, just like you, have been through a lot of storms. They're veterans at this, and they both seem to have this real uneasy feeling.
Well, it's a Category 4 storm that could be a Category 5 hitting the coast of Louisiana. And as Peyton and I were talking a little while ago, let's say it does get to 157 and a Category 5. Depending on where it comes in, if it comes in over that marshland, that's still over a lot of water. It doesn't dissipate that fast. It takes other things to get in the way. And when you have sustained winds, if you've ever seen some of these insurance videos where they show a sustained wind of 130, 140, 150 miles an hour, it rips houses apart. It rips roofs off. It does so much damage, and then that storm surge gets even bigger. And that's what got us in Hurricane Katrina. In the wee hours of the morning on Monday the 29th, 16 years ago, I was on the phone with Walter Maestri from Jefferson Parish with their EOC, and we thought we had dodged the bullet. And you know, it made a jog to the east, and we thought we had missed it. We just didn't realize that the Category 3 storm that hit still had Category 5 storm surge that just pounded water into the lake. I remember flying over the next day in a helicopter, and to see what it had done to the old twin spans, it was like they were thrown about like pieces of balsa wood by the storm.
Yeah, and we're watching that live look at the lakefront now. Take a look at these waves. They've definitely picked up. We've been there for several hours this morning. Our Meg Ferris has been showing us the conditions. And you're seeing a little bit of that black on the side of the camera. That's a bag over the camera just because it's starting to get rainy and windy out there to protect the equipment.
Yeah, and you see how our camera operator's just kind of getting bounced around. And this is at 6:20. We're expecting it to make landfall way south of us at noon, and you're already starting to see.
And Peyton, what are your thoughts on this right now as you see these pictures?
Real quick, guys, I need to mention a new tornado warning that was just issued for parts of Mississippi. If we can take Max full really quick, or our weather source, that would be great, so I can go in and just get some some details on this tornado warning that has been issued for parts of Hancock and parts of Harrison County here. And we are expecting to continue to see some of these tornado warnings as these outer bands move in. So this is going to include Bay St. Louis. It's going to include up towards Diamond Head. It's going to include Pass Christian and parts of Long Beach up towards Cuevas. You can see there as this band moves on shore, and it goes until 6:45. So we'll be tracking this for you, be keeping an eye on it, but we could be looking at a tornado moving inland near the Pass Christian area pretty soon as this makes its way over towards the north and east. It's of course going to be moving fast. It's moving northwest at 35 miles per hour. So if you're watching us in Bay St. Louis, if you're watching us in Waveland, Diamond Head, kind of southern parts of the Kill towards I-10, Pass Christian, Cuevas, you need to be in your tornado safe spot right now as we are tracking a potential tornado that's going to be right there near the coast. This is going to be moving towards the Henderson Point area and crossing near the bridge there over Bay St. Louis, or the St. Louis Bay, and then making its way up into the bay and heading up towards Diamond Head and Shoreline Park. So tornado warning once again until 6:45 a.m. It's going to be moving northwest at 35 miles an hour, heading up towards Pass Christian and then up towards Bay St. Louis, the Shoreline, and Diamond Head area. And once again, we'll be keeping an eye on that for you, but just be in your tornado safe spot.
And we do have some power outages already. About 3,000 people without power. This is Clico on the North Shore near Slidell. So we're already starting to see the power outages.
And Peyton, way in there, are we seeing enough wind for that to be causing power outages yet?
Yeah, well, you know, it doesn't take much to get some power outages down here.
That's true.
But we've had some wind gusts, 31 in Slidell.
Okay.
I don't know if they can take my weather source. These are some impressive winds that are just off the mouth of the river. We're gusting now to 104 off the Southwest Pass. Pilot Station East is 104. And I want you to remember, these are somewhat elevated. They're not at the sea surface, so these are going to be a little bit lower towards the surface of the water. But it just shows you that Look at Grand Isle. They're gusting to 46. We got tropical storm conditions now starting in Grand Isle. And boy, it's going to get rough there over the next couple of hours. The worst is going to be moving in throughout the morning, and then the worst will be closer to 11, noon, 1, and through the rest of the afternoon. It's going to be bad down there. So it is here.
Yeah.
It is here.
Unfortunately, I don't know how many people you've talked to about this, but you know, last year we dodged so many storms.
Yeah.
We dodged so many storms last year, and people get a little bit complacent and think, well, maybe we'll dodge this one too. And if it's coming into Houma, gee, how does that affect me if I'm in the city or if I'm in Jefferson Parish or St. Bernard or wherever?
You know, we live in an area where everyone's going to see different impacts in some sort of way, right?
Mm-hmm.
The North Shore is concerned, yes, with winds and losing power, maybe a little surge on the lake of 5 to 8 feet, but rivers on the North Shore are a big concern because we could see 10 to 15 inches of rain. New Orleans, what are we most concerned about? Rain. Fortunately, we have our Great Levee System now, and the rainfall is going to be a big problem. Of course, infrastructure, when you start talking about winds, I can guarantee you we're going to lose a lot of power across the area.
And let me add that we're just getting an update. We have 5,400 people without power in the state right now. The majority of those in Jefferson Parish, we're seeing about 2,700 outages there. And of course, we just expect this number to grow as more impacts get
it'll
closer.
be, I can't remember what it was during Zeta, but it was
It's
hundreds
going
of
to be big.
thousands.
And you're talking about the improved levee system. I mean, they've spent like $15 billion on a hurricane protection system that is rated to a 100-year storm, a Category 3. This is not a Category 3 storm. This could be tested to the limits.
It could. Something interesting, when we start talking about, you know, you always hear like a 100-year storm, a 200-year storm.
Mm-hmm.
That's out the window these days.
Well, and what that means, it doesn't mean a storm is likely to happen every 100 years. It's just a weird term someone came up with to help explain it. It means there's like a 1% chance of it happening in a given year. So it doesn't necessarily mean it can only happen once 100 years. It just means it's not very likely. And yeah, storms like this are not very likely down here. It's kind of odd that we got hit with a Category 3 last year in a similar spot.
Right.
And we're dealing with a Cat 4 on the verge of becoming a Cat 5 moving on in. So as Eric said, parts of our area are going to be tested to the limits.
Mm-hmm.
There are other areas down along the coast, they don't have protection.
No.
And they are going to feel, this is a type of storm where we start to use the word catastrophic, where areas of the coast might not be left. Grand Isle, Port Fourchon. We don't know what it's going to look like when this thing has moved through by the end of this afternoon.
And excuse me, have we jumped up on our numbers for the storm surge? Has that come through yet?
The latest I looked, we were at 12 to 16. That was as of 4 a.m.
That was way before we got this
It
news.
is, and you got to remember, they have to run these models, and these models, it takes a second for them to run sometimes. So I can guarantee you they're plugging new numbers in here because this is already overachieving what they had forecasted. And I can almost bet our storm surge goes up for areas west of Plaquemines Parish. So Lower Jefferson, Lafourche, we're probably going to see those storm surge numbers go up. Right now they're 12 to 16. I wouldn't be surprised if they go up just a little bit. So we're talking closer to maybe 17, 18. We don't have that yet, but with the intensity change, it's possible.
Oof. We're still about 6 hours away from landfall. Is there any possibility outside of a miracle that this weakens?
There's always a possibility. Hurricane intensity is a very finicky thing. They can fluctuate very quickly. Now, when it's this strong, the chance of it rapidly weakening into something that's not significant is very low. That's just not going to happen at this point. It's 70 miles off the coast of Grand Isle, and we're already feeling 100+ mile-per-hour winds off the mouth of the river here. So it's going to bring significant impacts. It's going to probably stay a Category 4. I mean, it's a strong Cat 4. Right now, the big question I have is it going to continue to strengthen? It's possible, and it looks like it is continuing to strengthen.
Yeah, when you said that those millibars were dropping at a rate you had never seen it before.
935.
That's telling.
What, a couple days ago we were in the thousands still. It was a tropical depression. I mean, unbelievable.
And I have a question. We're already starting to see these power outages, and Eric, you're probably the person who could answer this. We have so many hospitals in the metro area and just in our viewing area in general, packed with COVID, patients and packed to capacity. What happens when hospitals start losing power? They all have generators that are good enough?
They do have generators, and depending on how much they've got, a lot of times it's just for parts of the hospital, but they try to keep those. But with hospitals, with ICUs so full of COVID patients, what do you do if there are mass casualties in a hurricane like this?
Right.
I mean, where do you go? Do you set up triage tents? in parking lots. I mean, it could be potentially a huge problem. And the closer you are to the center of that storm, and if it comes in, let's say it comes in through Houma down in Terrebonne Parish, the river parishes, Jefferson Parish, are going to feel a lot worse than they are in New Orleans East or someplace like that.
And Jefferson Parish and Plaquemines Parish officials spoke with us earlier. They've already started to prepare for rescue operations when this passes because they know some people have stayed behind in areas that they really shouldn't have.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you were talking about sorry, I'm kind of querying some of our velocities here. I'm watching that tornado warning. By the way, let me mention that again. Tornado warning for Bay St. Louis, Diamond Head, Pasch Christian. It goes until 6:45. We're watching an area of rotation. Just looking at radar, we don't have anything definite, but it is possible that we get these quick spin up tornadoes. They can sometimes be significant. If you remember back in Hurricane Andrew, back in 1992, LaPlace got hit by a tornado in one of those outer bands of Andrew. So we will be watching these for you, and if you are under a tornado warning, do take it seriously. So Bay St. Louis, tornado safe spot. Pasch Christian, tornado safe spot.
All right, so again, we're going to take a break?
We're going to reset for a second.
Pardon me?
Let's pause. We're going to reset for a second.
Okay.
From WWL-TV, this is continuing coverage of Hurricane Ida.
If you are just joining us, we continue our coverage of Hurricane Ida, which is now a very strong Category 4, continuing to intensify.
Yeah, it's now 6:30, and we will be on all day watching this. As Peyton mentioned a few minutes ago, this thing has intensified. The millibars dropped precipitously, and then we're up to 150-mile-an-hour sustained winds. That's only 7 miles away from this being a major Category 5 storm. And we have, Peyton, I think you said we have never had a Category 5 hit the coast of Louisiana.
His mic's not on yet, but that's exactly what he said. And I was telling him earlier, we kind of get lost in some of the terminology, millibars and pressure. So I was asking him to remind us exactly what that means. He says it means when the pressure drops, it's a sign that the storm is intensifying, which is what we keep seeing here.
And it is done so fastly, too.
Well, and that's what's scary. And you get down to what a Hurricane Katrina was like. It was down to like 900 millibars.
Right, so we're very close to that.
Yeah, we're getting close to that. And there's still time. I mean, there's still several hours before we actually make landfall, wherever that's going to be. But wherever it's going to be, it is going to be rough.
That's right.
We do have reporters we'll check in with momentarily out live all around our area. But first, let's check in with Jade Cunningham with things you need to know.
Well, good morning. Here are some updates from around the area. Remember to check in on loved ones today to make sure they're prepared for the storm. You should also make sure you have a plan for keeping your pets safe. If they normally stay outside, please bring them inside. The CEO of the Louisiana SPCA says none of the shelters in the area are able to receive any more pets. They are closed. If you come across a displaced pet in the coming days, plan to take care of them at your home until the shelters reopen. New Orleans and Jefferson Parish officials have made it clear their drainage pumps are ready to go ahead of Hurricane Ida. 96 out of 99 pumps are working in New Orleans. The executive director of Sewerage and Water Board says Pump Station 6 along the 17th Street Canal and Pump Station 7 on the Orleans Avenue Canal should have the firepower to pick up the slack for the whole Lakeview area and help drain water in West End. Meanwhile, in Jefferson Parish, officials say 194 out of their 195 drainage pumps are working. Remember, you can get more updates along with live interactive radar on our WWL TV app. It is free and in your app store.
All right, Jade. Thank you very much. And now let's head to the North Shore. Doug Mouton is standing by in Tangipahoa with the parish president there. Hey, Doug.
Yeah, hey, Leslie, I'm here with Robbie Miller, of course, Tangipahoa Parish President. Robbie, look, this thing is coming right at Tangipahoa Parish, right? What is your worst fear for the wind punch? The whole parish?
Well, yes. I mean, they're telling the weather center's telling us from the bottom of the parish to the top we'll have 110 plus mile an hour winds, and that was yesterday's report. So if it's a Category 5, it could still be more than 110 plus gust. So we have a lot of trees. We've had a lot of rain, so we're concerned that those roots are not going to hold. And we saw Lake Charles. And I think that if this comes through like it is, although we're still praying, then then we could see a lot of debris, a lot of damage, power lines. We could be recovering for quite a while.
Yeah, Robbie and a large group of you from Tangipahoa Parish went to Lake Charles last year after Hurricane Laura, and unfortunately, it's a lesson that we're going to need later today, right?
Well, it sure looks that way. And we've made updates to our plan on how to respond with the information we got from there. So it's good that we did that. And our citizens need to know we're ready. We've updated. As soon as this thing clears, we're going to start moving. We're counting on our power partners to do everything they can to get us power as quickly as possible, because as you know, that's going to be one of the tough things, is to live without electricity. But more importantly, we've also worked with our sewer and water departments, our agencies, because those are even more critical. It's tough to make it without electricity. It's really tough to make it without sewer and water.
Yeah, no question about it. And look, we've seen an enormous number of outside of Louisiana power companies. Yeah, I know we're getting a first gust right now. We've seen a ton of bucket trucks and big power trucks around Tangipahoa Parish in place waiting for this thing to pass. Is that one of the ways we've gotten better at dealing with storms in the last decade, is getting more resources in place beforehand?
It sure seems that way. I've been in office 5.5 years, and in my term, we've had that support. And another real positive of our geographic location for Tangipahoa Parish is that we are the kind of the epicenter for where they launch from. So we have a lot of power companies, a lot of contractors. Entergy pours them in, Demco pours them in. Then we also have the National Guard right up the road in Roseland. And then they respond to all of South Louisiana from here. So we have these assets here. They're located here. We don't get all the attention, but it sure helps to have them here for our response, because they might have to clear out and set up to be able to go help other people. They have to get us taken care of first.
And one of the, I guess, slightly weird from how hurricanes work, and I know they're all different, is that the wind coming east to west across Lake Pontchartrain, and all that water in Lake Pontchartrain looks like it's going to be dumping west into your parish. What is your concern for the Manchac area, all of that?
Well, Doug, if we just have a southeast wind, our lower Tangipahoa Parish can start holding waters, begin to flood. So with a storm surge like they're talking about pushing in, 20 plus inches of rain throughout the whole parish, we're concerned on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday for the river to be able to get out into the lake, because when the lake's pushed in, Tangipahoa River just begins to flood pretty quickly. I don't know what that's about, but it's not a warning, thankfully. Not yet. So we're, it's a concern for us, obviously, with the storm surge and the amount of water it can push in. But the storm surge leaves. We're just as concerned days later about the rain that we have to deal with, because Tangipahoa River, like I talked about, probably drains 80% of our parish.
Yeah, no question about it. Now, your EOC office right now is full. You've got a ton of people working. What is the plan for the rest of today for you guys?
Well, watch it come in, respond as long as our folks can be safe to get out and help anybody that needs any help. We have all of the partners that keep our parish running, all the emergency managers, all the first responders, Entergy, state police, fire services, Acadian ambulance, our 911 operators are in here. So we have everybody that's necessary to be able to make a quick response is in this building. It's also a hardened building, so it's our safe house. So we're ready to take this storm on through tomorrow morning and then really get to work starting tomorrow.
Robbie, appreciate your time. Good luck. I'm sure we'll be talking to you all day. That's Tangipahoa Parish President Robbie Miller reporting live in a meet. Doug Mouton, Eyewitness News. Send it back to you.
Thanks, Doug. Excuse me. I want to talk a little bit more about this tornado warning we've got here. It is going to continue for Bay St. Louis over towards Shoreline, Diamond Head, and Pass Christian. Now, the threat for the tornado has passed Pass Christian. It's now off towards Bay St. Louis and heading into Hancock County. So the part of Harrison County included, you're in the good now. This is to be expected. Anytime you get these outer bands from a hurricane or tropical system, you're going to get tornado warnings, and we do still have that tornado warning. There's been some rotation. I haven't seen anything jumping out too much, but that's not to say a quick spin-up tornado certainly can't happen. So anywhere from Diamond Head, there's 43 there rolling into Bay St. Louis. Here's 90 going out of Bay St. Louis. That tornado threat is It's now moving past there, and I think we're going to be okay. But if you do live at the Kill and the Kill going down towards I-10 into Bay St. Louis and Waveland, you are going to have to watch for some gusty winds, of course, associated with the tropical system. So, yeah, the tornado warning continues until 6:45, but that threat is coming on down at this point. And overall, that's just what we're going to be watching today. We do have a new tornado watch, which means conditions are favorable for tornadoes. Obviously, we got a tropical system on our doorstep. That will go until 7 p.m. The tornado threat for our area will be highest this morning, and then it will start to shift towards the north and east away from us as we go through the day. So the closer the center of the storm gets to you, usually your tornado threat goes down. You don't have tornadoes near the center of hurricanes. So we continue to track Ida. Ida is a major Category 4 hurricane, a significant Category 4 storm with winds 150 miles an hour. And they're going to expire that tornado warning. Just a little heads up there, so you're good. You're in the clear in Hancock County. But there it is. There's Ida, and we've been watching its track. Now you notice it kind of wobbled a little bit. We've been saying the wobbles here are going to determine who sees landfall. There's the eye. That's the eye wall, the most intense part. We see those bright reds. That's going to be heading up towards parts of Terrebonne, Lafourche, Lower Jefferson, near Plaquemines. Big question right now is who gets the center and who gets right on the edge of those eye walls. Now, it's important to know that winds even extending this far out are going to be pretty significant. You can see wind gusts over 100 miles per hour extending out from the eye as this makes its way towards the northwest. So this is going to be a big problem for someone along the Louisiana coast. It is 7 miles per hour away from being a Category 5. A Category 5 is 157 or greater. It's sitting at 150 miles per hour. Going back to the 1900s, we've never had a storm this strong make landfall in southeast Louisiana. This is stronger than Betsy. This is stronger than Katrina was when it made landfall. It was a Cat 3. And then this is stronger than the 1915 hurricane, which was about 145 miles per hour. So this is a storm that many people and no one alive has ever dealt with an intensity like this in southeast Louisiana. So overall, our concern level very, very high for this. Now, we're getting our hourly update, so we'll get our next update from the National Hurricane Center at 7 a.m., so that'll happen probably in the next 10 to 15 minutes or so, and we'll see if this thing continues to intensify. We've been tracking the hurricane hunters here, and that's why I've got my laptop here. It just gives you so much up-to-minute data that I can't show on air, but I can look out here. So we watch the hurricane hunters fly on through this, and they're the ones who have been letting us know that it has continued to weaken or to continue to strengthen. Sheba was talking about earlier, whenever the pressure continues to drop, that's a sign that it's strengthening. So what we'll be telling is the next time the hurricane hunters fly through there, remember they drop the things out of the planes, that will measure the pressure all the way to the sea surface, and that's how we know exactly what the pressure is doing out here with Ida. But you can see they're taking it through the track. If it travels along that red line, it's headed up to Houma, it's headed up to Thibodaux with the center, but this eye and the eastern eye wall and this intense part of the storm is going to move up and scrape across the coast, and boy, it's going to be a close call for the New Orleans Metro, whether we see 80 to 90 mile per hour winds or if we see 100 to 120 miles per hour. That's a fine detail that's hard to say right now, but it is possible that we do see those significant winds, and you should be planning to see that much of a significant wind in the New Orleans Metro. At this point, all preparations should have been completed. We've got 100 mile per hour wind gusts just off the coast at this point, down towards the mouth of the river. Grand Isle is currently gusting. Grand Isle is currently gusting. They were gusting to near 50 earlier. I want to go back and see what their gusts are at this point as it gets closer and closer. So the tropical storm conditions are already at our coast. We're gusting to 49 in Grand Isle. And I can't show, I can actually zoom out here. We're gusting to, as you can see there, this is off the mouth of the river, sustained at 87, gusting to 106, sustained at 92, gusting to 104. There's Grand Isle, so this is south. And these are elevated, so the wind is usually a little bit higher when you're elevated because there's no friction. So if you take it to the surface, they're gonna be a little bit lower than this, but we've still got significant winds just off the coast and our center of the hurricane right in there. So here's the onshore flow. This is the storm surge problem. You got winds currently pushing off towards the west. We're going to start to see storm surge come on up into the east bank of Plaquemines Parish as we go through the next couple of hours. Then we'll start to really see that storm surge increase later on in the next couple of hours up on the west bank. and into lower Jefferson, creeping up to Jean Lafitte, creeping up into Grand Isle, Port Fourchon. That's as the storm gets in here, it's going to start to push more of a southerly wind, of course, on the east side, and that's going to throw water up into these low-lying areas. Houma, Thibodaux, into Terrebonne Bay right now, you still have more of a northerly wind, so your surge is not going to be significant right now, and the track of this is going to determine who sees the most significant surge. Right now, the track would keep the most significant surge for Port Fourchon and Grand Isle, and perhaps not as much for Houma, but still we're forecasting about 8 to 12 feet for Houma and Thibodaux, whereas over here towards Grand Isle and Port Fourchon and up Barataria Bay, we're looking at perhaps up to 16 feet, and that could be a little bit higher. Our forecast right now does not include that recent update of 150 miles per hour. The Hurricane Center, they have special models, they're called slosh models, and that's how we get an idea of how high storm surge could be. They're probably running those right now with the latest data, and I'm hoping we have that in the 7 a.m. advisory on whether or not we're seeing, if we're gonna see any higher, storm surge values. There's just so much data coming in at this point, trying to make sure we're getting it all. So you can see it with our buoys out in the Gulf of Mexico. We of course don't have as many buoys as we have inland weather stations, but we're sustained at 84 on this buoy that is going to be taking somewhat of a direct hit. It's not reporting a gust, but I'd be curious to see what the gust is. Gust extending pretty far away from the center here, reporting 60 miles per hour as that wind field is continuing to expand. It's slowly, but it is expanding, and this is all headed up towards the north. So that's what we're looking at. Oh, great. We have a live picture from Grand Isle. This is, we're currently gusting to 40 miles per hour. Notice you can still see the beach, so we haven't seen too much surge come in, but boy, it's rough. And what you'll be watching as we go through today, and I hope this camera's not going to survive this storm, I can almost guarantee you. We'll probably lose it at some point. Look at that. That's a wave coming in. And if you've ever experienced storm surge, it's frightening how fast it can happen. So for example, you could be standing here watching this and the water's out here, and then all of a sudden you get this huge gust of wind and it immediately pushes that water. And if that wind gust is 50 miles an hour, that water's coming at you very fast, and then the next thing you know, you're inundated and the water's around you, and you hope it goes back out, but storm surge, it just will keep coming in, and it happens quite frequently, or it happens quite fast. I've experienced it a couple of times. So we'll continue to check back on that image. That's great that we do have eyes down there in Grand Isle. That could end up being close to where ground zero is for Hurricane Ida. So we continue to watch here. The Hurricane Center is going to be putting out their 7 a.m. advisory, and our next update probably in the next couple of minutes here. We're going to be watching that closely, and it'll probably happen before 7 a.m. Hurricane hunters are in there right now, and I'm waiting for them to send back their data that the pressure drop, and if our pressure is continuing to drop, that's not a good thing. We're at the point though where regardless of what this thing does, whether it strengthens a little more or weakens a little, it's coming in, and it's going to be a devastating storm for these areas down here along our coast. I hate this. You're talking lower Lafourche taking the brunt of nearly a Category 5 hurricane all the way up through Lafourche Parish. This is the track. This means that the entire area for Lafourche, up through St. Charles, even close to the New Orleans metro, could see these significant impacts. And then on the west side, a major Category 4 hurricane, nearly Cat 5, it doesn't matter whether you're on the west side or the east side, the significant impacts are going to be there, especially with the wind. So for Houma, Thibodaux, yeah, the center may go over you. You're still going to get the terrible winds. Morgan City, you're going to be on that western eye wall. You could still very well see wind gusts over 120 miles per hour later on today. So just continuing to look at some of this data that's coming in from the Hurricane Center. We'll wait and see what they think. We'll be getting that in about the next 7 minutes or so. All right, I do want to talk about some of these impacts on the latest, and these could certainly change with this next advisory, but this is what we were thinking as of about 5 a.m. With regard to the storm surge threat here. And this is going to be life-threatening storm surge for our coastal areas. 12 to 16 feet. Now, I was telling Eric earlier, now that we have a 150 mile per hour hurricane, they put this out when they were forecasting a 145 mile per hour hurricane. Now, I'm not sure there's going to be a big difference there. We'll wait and see what the models say, but it is possible that is a little bit higher. That's going to be flying up into lower Jefferson here, and that is going to make its way pretty far into the area. You got to remember, this storm is going to be pushing water in its entire journey through here. So here, the water will be more out of the north, but once the storm is here, you've got an easterly wind, or you got a southerly wind, and it's going to continue to be more of a southerly wind as it moves up towards the north.
And Peyton, you know, we have dodged so many bullets, and I think that's why a lot of people stayed maybe this time. This bullet, we're not going to dodge.
No.
It's just not going to happen. And I don't think people sometimes understand the gravity of what a storm surge like this and what sustained winds of 150 miles an hour hitting the coast of Louisiana mean. Houma and Terrebonne Parish, Lafourche Parish, they've lost so much of their coastline over the years from storms. We've tried to replenish it, but we can't do anything, you know, at least to bring back what it was 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. It is a big way to protect us. We have lost so much of that. This is going to be devastating if it takes that track.
It is, and it's going to take that track. It's headed there. This is headed towards Houma and Thibodaux. This is, you know, it doesn't get much worse. This is a worst case scenario for some of these areas. You think about all these scenarios when you're talking about hurricanes. What's the worst case scenario for this place, that place? It honestly could not get worse for some of these areas, for Houma, Thibodaux, and down here in lower Lafourche, lower Jefferson. Not only the wind threat, but as you were saying, Eric, the storm surge threat. And the storm surge is already coming up. I'm looking at a video from a friend over in Biloxi. The storm surge is up there, and they're far away from the center. So we are extremely prone to storm surge around here, and it is a significant threat for areas here in southeast Louisiana.
Well, and the thing is that water, when that wind is that strong, it just keeps on pushing and pushing and pushing water up toward the shoreline, into the lake, onto the coast in Mississippi, and it just decimates those marshlands in southeast Louisiana.
Yeah, you know, our marshlands are our first line of defense. I will say, when you start getting up to a Category 4 storm, Cat 5 storm, and you start getting 20 foot of water here, 16 feet of water, there's not going to be a whole lot that can protect you from anything. I mean, the islands out here in Biloxi, or the Mississippi Sound barrier islands here, can't even protect you from, you know, storm surge. These little marshes certainly aren't going to protect you. Where is this at? This is Highway 90 in Hancock County. Oh, so we're in Hancock County here, over in probably Bay St. Louis. We've got squally conditions, people still out. I know there's a mandatory evacuation for Hancock County in the low-lying areas, the Jordan River. A lot of those houses are raised. They can handle 7 to 11 feet, but it's just one of those risks that, you know, if you have cars, things like that. Let's go back to our weather source really quick, because we're going to talk about storm surge here. And where you see the red, or where areas could see 9 feet above the ground. Now, that extends pretty far inland, doesn't it? I mean, you're talking all the way up into central and upper Lafourche Parish, all the way up to Highway 90. Could see significant flooding from this. There's a levee system for around Galliano. That's why it's in the white. All that rainwater, all that surge coming up into the Houma area, that's 9 feet, and it gets right up close to town. We've got surge values all the way up into Ascension Parish. You've got surge, big problems on the west side of the lake. Of course, in New Orleans, we're protected by the hurricane protection and the levees, and then up on the North Shore, watching for the lake rise. So
yeah, but what the trouble is with here in New Orleans, if it's a ton of rain, if we get the rain that they're talking about, we just got some information from the Sewage and Water Board. They said they're saying they're prepared and ready to respond. Obviously, right now, as of now, 96 of the 99 drainage pumps are available. The pumps that are down are DPS 14 in New Orleans East, DPS 6 in Lakeview near Metairie Road, DPS 12 in Lakeview near Marina Drive. And turbine 4 is now in service. Turbine 5 and 6 are both in service. And they've moved in 4 of those big temporary generators in to help out with the power. And that's one of the things that Councilman Joe Giarrusso was saying the other day, is he's worried about the power, because that's kind of the weak link. Without the power, the pumps don't run. The pumps have to run here, especially if we get the kind of rain that they're protecting and that they're predicting, and that the outer bands that will hit us if that hurricane does go in where you're projecting it, What kind of rain are we talking about here in the city? In Jefferson. Jefferson's going to feel more wind than we are because they're closer to the eye.
Absolutely. And by the way, what we're going to experience today, it's not really the outer bands. I mean, we'll be right on that core of that system. Yeah. And, you know, usually we talk about our pumps all the time. We have our summertime storms that pop up and we'll see significant flooding in some areas. But do you know that happens, when it happens, it's usually in a very isolated area, right? Whereas this system could produce heavy rainfall over the entire New Orleans area. That's what's so concerning about the flooding threat from rainfall around here, is that it could be a widespread area that sees that 10 to maybe up to 15 inches of rainfall as we go into this afternoon and continues into parts of tonight. So it is going to be somewhat stretched out. The big question right now is, do we get any of those heavy bands that just kind of train up over the city or parts of the city? And that's where you're going to have your significant problems. Yeah. And then you got to hope the pumps are able to keep up.
And again, sometimes people say that, oh, you're the media, you're trying to scare people. No. We're not trying to scare people. These are the scenarios that are actually possible, and in this case, very plausible of what could happen with a storm of this magnitude.
Yeah, and this is something you hear every single day, every single hurricane. You're hyping this, you're hyping that. Here's the deal. Someone said, we're from Louisiana, we can handle this. Here's the thing. No one on the coast of Louisiana has ever gone through a hurricane like this in southeast Louisiana in the past 100 years. So no one has gone through a 150-mile-per-hour hurricane at this point. We've had 140. Betsy was 140. That was a long time ago. We've improved a lot of things since then. We had a 145-mile-per-hour hurricane, same location, back in the 1950s. But Katrina was a Buras, Plaquemines Parish kind of landfall. It was a Cat 3. The winds were not this significant, but the storm surge was more significant than Katrina. So some areas down here have not experienced a storm like this, perhaps ever.
And not a direct hit like that with that kind of sustained winds, because there are a lot of people who have camps down around there. It's not as populous as when you get up by Houma or in Thibodaux, places like that. But their levee systems can only handle so much. And with the storm surge that strong and sustained winds as strong as they are, I know that building codes have improved, and you know, you hope that your roof will be able to take it. But there's a lot of old homes all around this area that just weren't built for this kind of wind.
There's a lot of places that aren't. I mean, you start, especially near the coast, where your winds are going to be the most significant. Now, the thing is, yes, this thing's a 150-mile-per-hour storm. We've got winds perhaps gusting over 165, 170. That's going to be for a very specific area. A hurricane intensity is the strongest, the absolute strongest part of the storm, which is usually very small, and then it will start to decrease as you get further away from that point. But if it's a powerful enough storm, it's going to take a while before you get below that destructive part. So winds could be, you know, 100 plus over here in Houma, 120, 130, but they could still very well be 100 miles per hour close to the New Orleans metro. Could be 100 miles per hour plus in the parishes, river parishes, and up on the North Shore. And we are forecasting that, Eric.
All right, we do have someone from the Army Corps of Engineers on the phone right now. We're trying to get him, and that's one of the things we want to talk about is the levee system, because we know that the levee system is vastly improved here since 16 years ago when we were hit by Katrina. A lot of things are different, but we didn't have a storm like this coming in. And again, we're talking about the storm surge, and what do you expect to see at the 7 a.m. update? Because we're only a few minutes away from that.
We're waiting to see, and I think that's why they're waiting so long. They're waiting to get that data in from the Hurricane Hunter plane before they send out their advisory. And we're waiting to see, is the pressure still dropping in this thing? Because that will be a sign on if it's continuing to intensify. The pressure had continued to drop, and I told you this earlier, Eric. This is one of 11 hurricanes that has ever deepened this fast in the Atlantic. Going back, we keep records for hurricanes back to the 1850s. So this is rare. This is not common. This is a really, I think we just got the advisory in. Let me check. It did. What does it say? 150. So they're holding it at 150. Look at that. Gusts up to 185 miles per hour. The pressure has dropped. It's at 933. So the pressure's dropped a little bit. We want that to level off, so the storm will level off. But the pressure has dropped a hair, It's still moving northwest at 15 miles an hour, and you can see your winds there of about 150 to gusts to 185. So the winds are the same, but we are continuing to see that pressure drop just a little bit, and I want to leave you with this. We are 50 miles southwest of the mouth of the Mississippi River. Still forecast to make landfall near Port Fourchon by around lunchtime. Here.
All right, thank you very much. As I said, we do have someone from the Army Corps of Engineers, excuse me, on the phone with us right now. Heath Jones. Heath, thank you for joining us. This is a storm that we have not seen before, and what are you guys thinking at the Corps about what the system that you all have built can take?
Hey, good morning. So we've built this system to a 1% design level for surge value. So this particular track on the east bank of the river really should not be much of a problem. The surge values projected are much lower than the heights of the levees that we improved after Katrina. The West Bank, the National Hurricane Center is calling for some possible overtopping of the levees down there, but it's not majorly over the top of that design value that we've designed the system for.
And what about for the folks down in Terrebonne? If this thing lands in Terrebonne as Cat 4, a strong Cat 4 with 150 mile an hour winds and storm surge, what does that do to the marshlands that are really part of the barrier that help us all?
Well, Terrebonne does have a levee protection system,
yes,
Morganza the Gulf system.
But is it designed for this?
No, it's not. It's not designed for this. It is part of a federal project we are intending to build in the future, but no, I don't believe it's designed for this level. They may have some issues down there, so follow the local leaders' advice. I believe there's some evacuations ordered down that way, and yeah, I mean, they may have some issues down on that system down in Terrebonne, Lafourche Parish.
So you feel pretty confident for Orleans and Jefferson, the levee systems here, that if this storm stays on, the levee system should be able to hold. If it would take a jog to the east, what would that mean?
So we've seen some modeling with the jogs to the east. It definitely increased the water level, but still nothing on the East Bank system. We have levees out on the East Bank, some around St. Bernard Parish and to the east that are up to 30 feet high. The St. Bernard T-wall is about 32 feet. So we've vastly improved this levee system since Katrina. It's a perimeter approach. We have the surge barrier, Seabrook, the structures out at the lakes. And we're pretty confident, even with a small jog to the east, that the East Bank system will hold. Our partners with the levee districts have been out the past couple of days closing the system up, closing all the gates. They're just about done with all that, if not done already by this morning, and now we're waiting to kind of see what happens.
And of course, the thing that stands out to everybody is this is coming on the 16th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. We knew the levees failed us because we had dodged the bullet. The storm took a turn to the east. We thought we had dodged a bullet. We didn't realize just how much or how weak that levee system was at the time, and that's what you guys have spent the past 16 years doing, is improving that levee system so that would never happen again.
Yeah, exactly. So we spent $14.5 billion Congress gave us after Katrina to improve the system. So we've done vast changes in design, vast changes in our approach. Again, it's a perimeter approach where we've pushed the protection out. It has resiliency built in it to where if it is overtopped in places, it's designed to take that overtopping. We've got special grass on the levees. We got transitions that are hardened. The flood walls designed have vastly changed to a T-wall design versus an I-wall design that failed us during Katrina. So we've spent 16 years trying to make this the best possible system in the world, and we truly believe it is.
And for the city of New Orleans, the 3 outfall canals that you all put floodgates on, that was one of the most important things that you did, aside from closing Mr. Go and building that humongous levee system out there in St. Bernard. I mean, it's just like those were all such important things to happen.
That's right. That is the perimeter approach I keep talking about. We pushed the protection out towards the lake, towards Lake Bourne. On the west bank, we built West Closure Complex, the largest pump station in the world. So we've taken the defense system and pushed it out towards the water. And so the idea, like during Katrina, the water was able to get into 17th Street Canal, Orleans, and London. But now we have the closures at the lake with pump stations associated with it. So we're not letting the water get against those walls that had failures during Katrina.
Yeah, and Heath, we're looking at a picture of Terrebonne. Terrebonne is in for a very rough day today. If this thing stays on the track that we're talking about, aside from Terrebonne, what other vulnerable areas that your federal levees are designed to protect, where do you think you're the most vulnerable if it stays on this track with your levee system?
So I'd say Terrebonne for sure. Grand Isle, obviously, we have a sacrificial dune. It was a federal project down in Grand Isle. There's not a levee. It's a sacrificial dune that has made the news quite frequently lately, but it's a barrier island. Then I would say Plaquemines Parish. We have a mixture of federal and non-federal levees down in Plaquemines Parish. I know they got mandatory evacuation south of Belchase down there. They look to be sort of across crosshairs for surge as well.
And Jefferson Parish is going to be a bit closer to the eye of the storm if it stays on this track. They will feel it a lot more than we will in the city. I mean, we'll still feel it in the city, but the farther you get away from New Orleans toward that track, the worse it's going to be.
Yeah, that's right. So the further west you get, the more wind impacts you're going to get. I was looking a graph earlier about, it's like a 20% chance of hurricane force winds in the city of New Orleans. It rapidly increases your probabilities as you go west. So, yeah, Jefferson Parish, St. Charles Parish, Lafourche, Terrebonne, they might have a bad day.
Yeah, we're looking at Jefferson Parish right now. And, we've always said that the worst case scenario for New Orleans would be a hurricane coming up the river when the river is high. That's not the case happening here. This does appear to be the worst case scenario for Terrebonne and Lafourche parishes.
Yeah, that's right. So there's really 2 scenarios. I mean, there's 1,000 hurricane scenarios, but 2 that if you can boil down to. There's one that goes east of the river, which was Katrina, which posed a problem for the East Bank. And then if one that's going kind of west of the river really is the West Bank, Lafourche, Terrebonne Parish. It causes problems there. So unlike Katrina, this one is west of the river at landfall. The river's kind of serves as a barrier between the 2. Of course, with the river levees, we don't anticipate any problems on the river levees at all. I've seen a forecast of 12 feet here at our district at Carrollton, but every year during floods, we go through that. We see 17, 18 feet in the past couple of years routinely, so we don't think any issues will happen on the river itself.
And you were talking about Plaquemines Parish because of the way that parish is geographically laid out. They get it coming and going.
Yeah, they do. I mean, it's geographically, they can get it on the West Bank and they can get it on the East Bank because they're literally sticking out in the Gulf of Mexico. Yeah. So geographically, it's a challenge for them when these storms come. So this one will pose a problem for the West Bank of Plaquemines and probably the East Bank of Plaquemines, Braithwaite, Scarsdale area, those areas as well.
So how confident are you, and we'll end this soon, but how confident are you in the levee system around Metro New Orleans? I guess the biggest problem we'll see here is the rainfall and trying to pump all that water out. But you think the levees are secure enough for a storm of this magnitude and this track?
I do. I do. We like I said, we spent the past 16 years, spent a lot of money, a lot of work went into designing this system. We have some great non-federal sponsors, great partners in the Levee Authority East, Levee Authority West, Plaquemines Parish, that we work with every single day, trying to make sure this system is going to perform. We've been in close contact with them. Again, they've closed everything down. They've done the required maintenance. The system is ready to perform. Quite frankly, I'm personally more worried about rain and wind. These rainfall forecasts, I don't have to say it, we all know, are above the design capacity of some of the pumping systems. And in the wind, obviously, Hurricane Gustav didn't come here, but people were out power for weeks. So those two, if I'm honest, are the two things I'm worried about: more rain and wind than the actual surge for New Orleans proper. Yeah, and if it stays on the current track, we'll still be in for some very strong winds from the center of this storm, as far as Jefferson, Orleans, all the way into St. Bernard. That's right. All right. Thank you very much, Heath. We appreciate your candor and information you give. And we all hope you're right, that this system can withstand what this storm is bringing with it. Yes, sir. Thanks. All right. Thank you very much.
From WWL-TV, this is continuing coverage of Hurricane Ida.
If you're just joining us, we're continuing our coverage of Hurricane Ida, and Erica just had a great conversation with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. It's what everyone's wondering: can our levees withstand a storm this year?
Do we have an open by chance? I don't remember if we did yesterday. Good morning. This is meteorologist Kaylee Dion with a look at your forecast for Hurricane Ida as of 7 o'clock in the morning on Sunday Central Time here at WFAA Studios. We are watching a very powerful hurricane approach the southeastern Louisiana coast. Here's a look at the updated watches and warnings that are ongoing right now. Hurricane warning stretching not only for the coast of southeastern Louisiana, but all the way up to the Louisiana and Mississippi state line. And tropical storm warning stretch all the way up into central, even close to northern Mississippi right now, and stretch as far east as the Alabama, Mobile area. So if we look at the radar at this point, this is this morning at about 7 o'clock in the morning, and you can see the storm, a very well-defined eye with a very strong eye wall circling the entire storm there. You can see it's really close. It's going to make landfall earlier than this afternoon. It's going to make landfall in the next few hours along the southeastern Louisiana coast. The conditions have already been deteriorating across not only southeastern Louisiana, but over toward Mississippi and Alabama and the Florida Panhandle with those outer bands where there could be heavy rainfall, even tornadoes that spin up with that. But storm surge has already started in many of these locations, and also the worst is to come when that eye wall goes on shore. So widen it back out. Let's get the latest update at 7 o'clock from the National Hurricane Center. This is a very strong Category 4 storm. Category 4 winds go up to 156 miles per hour. We're at 150 right now, and the storm is still strengthening upon landfall. Moving to the northwest at about 15 miles per hour, and it's going to continue to move to the northwest quickly. So that's why we expect it to make landfall late this morning, right around the lunch hour. I do think that it'll be inland by the time we get to 1 o'clock in the afternoon. But look at those winds. Upon landfall, 155 mile per hour winds. This is going to be a storm that we talk about for a very, very long time. Thoughts and prayers are with the people that decided to stay in southeastern Louisiana. But the thing is, once the storm makes landfall and it moves inland, it will rapidly weaken. So it'll be a Category 1 storm by late tonight. Then it will be a tropical depression by the time we get into the day on Tuesday. But it's still going to cause major problems all the way up into the mid-Atlantic. These areas here, which we'll look at in just a second, have had a lot of rainfall. So it's going to be more rain on top of a very saturated environment. If we look at our time cast here, you can see I've stopped it at 7 o'clock tonight. It's already on shore here, and it's going to continue to basically ride the Mississippi River all the way up, still packing quite a punch into central Mississippi, and then eventually turning to the north and east, moving right over the top of the Nashville area, which we've talked about quite a bit in the news with a lot of flooding in the recent weeks. And so this is going to drop large amounts of rainfall throughout the day on Tuesday for those locations. Look at these rainfall totals. I mean, we're talking 10 to 15, even more inches of rainfall along the southeastern Louisiana coast all the way over toward Biloxi, Mississippi. 5 to 10 inches stretch all the way up into northern Mississippi and northwest Alabama. You can see the sharp cutoff as the storm starts to turn to the northeast, though rainfall totals go down quite a bit once you get into central Louisiana. So it does take more of that northeasterly track, which will keep some of that heavier rainfall away. We won't see anything here in North Texas. But the locations that will unfortunately see that rain are very saturated already. What does that mean when we say that? That just means there's been a lot of rain. The soil's so saturated that any wind from the storm, which we'll look at in just a second, could blow down trees easier, power lines easier, because the hard ground isn't holding it in there. So if we look here, let's look at those winds that we're expecting. This storm as moves on land along the coast is going to be 155 miles per hour. All the way up to Baton Rouge and north of Baton Rouge, 130 mile per hour winds, or even more possible in those locations in the red. 94 to 130 the farther north you go, and then 75 tropical storm force winds all the way up into northern Mississippi. So these spots that are very saturated are going to be able to blow over some of those trees and power lines, so power will be out for weeks in some of these locations. Let's go over the scale and what we're looking at categories. As this storm, I mean, it ramped up so quickly from a Category 1 to a strong Category 4. So winds, extensive damage was just a Category 2, which winds go up to 110 miles per hour. Let's talk Category 3 as I walk over here. Those winds are going to be up to about 129 miles per hour, which that Category 3 strength will go all the way up past Baton Rouge and into some parts of central Mississippi. Category 4, extreme winds. This could cause catastrophic damage. The range you can see goes from 130 to 156. This storm right now, still intensifying, is at 150-mile-per-hour winds. What that means is those winds are pushing those waves on shore, as well as the motion of the storm itself, pushing water to a stationary object, which is land. So that's where you see that really large storm surge, and that's what's going to cause most of the initial damage in southeastern portions of Louisiana, along with the wind and the rain. But here's a look at the updated storm surge. The spots in pink could see 10 to 16 feet of storm surge. It's already started. It's already starting in spots in southeastern Louisiana. You can see in the red here that goes up toward New Orleans and toward the mouth of the Mississippi, 7 to 12 feet storm surge, and you can see 6 to 9 feet of storm surge all the way out toward Pecan Island, Louisiana. So I'm going to step out. This is the latest update from the National Hurricane Center as of 7 o'clock. Again, a very dangerous Category 4 storm with winds of 150 miles per hour. But look at the gusts, 185 miles per hour, moving to the northwest at 15. That pressure is down to 933 millibars and it's still falling. So it's going to continue to intensify upon landfall, unlike some storms that start to weaken before landfall. This storm is not that, and we are going to continue to watch this for you. We'll have updates on WFAA.com throughout the morning hours. Also, you can join us on Weekend Daybreak for the updates live as we start the show at about 8 o'clock in the morning. We'll have updates. Again, this is WFAA meteorologist Kaylee Dion with an update on Hurricane Ida.
With the millibars dropping, yes, we know that is bad. But he's saying a lot of these 150-mile-an-hour winds we're predicting is estimates, and he's saying that the buoy is actually showing 88-mile-an-hour winds if you go from the distance from the center of the eye to the buoy is the same distance from the center of the eye now to Orleans Parish. Do you agree with that assessment, that is what is really out there?
Yeah, it is. And you know, I think it's a wonderful estimate. I was actually doing that earlier. I was looking at a buoy about the same distance from New Orleans to the eye, and yes, that would be reasonable that we could see winds 80, 90, perhaps a little bit stronger on the gust. The 150 mile per hour winds we're showing right now are going to be in a very small area near the center. We're going to be right there near the center and near landfall. We will not see 150 mile per hour winds in New Orleans. It's not going to happen. But we could see those gusts approach 100, certainly. Yeah.
And Peyton, when we see winds of 88 miles an hour in a city or so, we've seen winds of 30, 40 miles an hour knock out power to tens of thousands of people.
Yeah, that's why, power outages are guaranteed. And a lot of people in our area aren't going to have power. I mean, it may be that 99% of the people end up not having power by the end of this afternoon and evening. That's a very realistic possibility when you've got the potential for 100+ mile per hour winds over a large chunk of the area.
And then couple that with a possibility of flooding, and that's real trouble.
Exactly. Well, the flooding saturates the ground.
Yeah, no question.
Yeah. So, but Meg, I think our bigger concern...
no question. It's not going to be a cakewalk. No question. I'm just trying to put perspective, because our minds are absolutely going to worst case scenario, and we all remember Katrina, and I remember Betsy, and I know a lot of other people do, and so I'm just feeling, more. Homa's really gonna take a pounding. We're gonna take a pounding, but it's not this 150 mile an hour winds. Now, one other question I have for you, Peyton, with your scientific knowledge. This expert who was running models for me is telling me that Katrina when it came to shore, you could it was as wide as going up to, I believe he said Cincinnati, Ohio, and I mean, very, very far. This is not as big as a field. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Meg. The storm surge was so problematic in Katrina because it was a Category 5 the day before, and the wind field expanded dramatically. And the wind field of Katrina was way bigger than what we're dealing with Ida. So Category doesn't really give you a perfect representation of storm surge. Your wind field usually does. And that's why, you know, it's a completely different storm. It really is. And Katrina was just one of those, everything was kind of perfect for it to be a worst case scenario for a
And remember, during Katrina, it was a Cat 5 for days, not just one day. It was for days. Then it finally landed as a Cat 3. Now, for Terrebonne and Lafourche Parish, this likely could be their Katrina.
Exactly right. And these winds are going to be, landfall, are likely going to be stronger than what anyone saw in Katrina landfall. This surge is going to be devastating for areas down there along the coast. You know, for people who stayed, I had someone message me. They said about to make landfall. So this afternoon, anyone down along the coast, if you stayed, you're probably going to get an extreme wind warning. What that is you're supposed to treat it like a tornado warning.
Keith Jones with the U.S. area may have some problems with Hurricane Ida. He also said the levees in the New Orleans metro area are better prepared. Parish area may have some problems with Hurricane Ida. Both CLECO and Entergy customers are starting to lose their power. CLECO is reporting more than 5,000 customers. CLECO is reporting more than 5,000. Another 140 are impacted in the Covington area. And Entergy power outages have started to increase across southeast Louisiana as well. According to Entergy's website, more than 6,000 customers are now without power. Jefferson Parish has the highest number of outages with about 2,800. Plaquemines Parish has the second most with more than 2,600. The St. Tammany Parish Sheriff's Office wants all residents to know the entire area will be severely affected by Hurricane Ida. They have hundreds of Sheriff's Office employees available to help people this morning, but as the weather deteriorates, they may not be able to respond to an emergency. As soon as it is safe for the deputies to get back out, they say they will begin responding to those in need of help. Remember, you can get more updates along with live interactive radar on our WWL TV app. Just search WWL TV. It's in your app store and it is free.
Jay, thank you very much. Now we want to head out to St. Bernard where Duke Carter is. And guys, they're expecting storm surge 8 to 12 feet, and it could be worse by the time it gets here.
Hey, good morning, Leslie. Yeah, we are here in St. Bernard Parish, again, just monitoring those conditions. And pretty much it was a clear for a quick second, maybe for about a good 30 or so minutes where it was just easy breezy. But then we're starting to get the rain out here. But I kind of want to bring your attention to what we're seeing over here. Pretty much we're starting to see, well, some businesses take precaution by making sure that businesses were boarded up. And so we've seen this business board up, especially a few others here along East Judge Perez Drive here in St. Bernard Parish, here specifically in Chalmette. And so we did speak with Guy McGinnis, Parish President Guy McGinnis, again, making sure that people did take precaution. Again, earlier this morning, we were at the levee wall, I should say, pretty much the wall that protects everyone within this part of St. Bernard Parish. And Guy McGinnis said they're keeping contact with those folks who are outside the levee protection system just to make sure that they are safe. Now, we did catch up with him this morning, again, about people taking heed to the warnings about how serious Hurricane Ida is. Take a listen to what he had to say.
You know, you ride around a little bit, there's nobody on the streets. A lot of our businesses are closed. So we're ready for it. And we're ready to get back to work after this storm comes through. So we have crews ready to clean the roads, the debris, and open these roads so people can get back to life as soon as possible.
And hopefully people can get back as long as there's not significant damage here in St. Bernard Parish. Guy McGinnis tonight, Parish President Guy McGinnis tonight, also continued that conversation. And in part, if there's not significant damage, he does plan to send some of his emergency operation crews over to those harder hit areas like Terrebonne and Lafourche parishes just to make sure those guys can at least get the help that they need, because we know how significant that area may be impacted. And so again, over here in St. Bernard Parish on East Judge Perez Drive, again, just some folks taking heed, making sure they're protecting their belongings. You can see some of those businesses boarded up. We did try to catch with some people out and about this morning, getting out their house, walking around. We just saw one person walk their dog, but they ran inside as soon as they experienced some of the heavy rains. And that's been the entire case throughout this morning when we arrived here in St. Bernard Parish around maybe 1:30, 2 o'clock, is the fact that you may get that heavy downpour. It'll stop. You get the heavy winds gusting a little bit with the rain, feels like needles in your back. And so again, we're just monitoring the conditions. Good news is that power is still on here in St. Bernard Parish, at least where we are here on East Judge Perez Drive. So we're just driving around, seeing what the conditions are like. If anything does change, we'll let you know. For now, though, reporting, Duke Carter, Eyewitness News.
We definitely noticed those winds ramping up. Stay safe out there, Duke. We'll check back in with you in just a bit. We were telling you guys about some power outages we're already seeing across the state. We just learned power outages are already happening in Grand Isle. Let's get straight over to Councilmember Ricky Template, who's joining us by phone on the conditions there. Ricky, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here, and good morning.
Good morning. And what's happening over there now?
Well, you know, you have the speeder bands coming in off the storm right now. Ida's already affecting Grand Isle. You know, you're feeling about 50 to 75 mile an hour gusts through these speeder bands. You have water crossing Highway 1 from the bay side currently, as well as, you know, the tide is rising on the Gulf side pretty rapidly as we speak.
And are you there right now, Ricky?
No, actually, I am not. I'm in the Kenner area right now.
Okay.
Evaluating a couple of things along the lakefront here, and I've been in communications with Mayor Commodell directly. I was just on the phone with him, and I think we sent you some live video from some cameras we have live on Grand Isle. As long as Grand Isle has experienced some power outage, but the whole island's not out yet.
Okay. And what did Mayor Commodell have to say? What was kind of his tone at this point? We've been getting these updates on the storm, and it's just looking worse and worse.
Well, you know, it keeps taking that little bit of a jog to the east that keeps it putting it closer to the island itself, crossing right there by Lafourche. They're going to take the brunt of this storm, so they're hunkered down. There's probably still about 50 people on the island.
Right.
You know, six are probably firemen, probably another, 10 that are police officers, and some other residents. They're all just hunkered down, and they at this point they have no choice. They're going to have to ride this situation out and pray for the best.
Yeah, I asked you about outages. We actually have that Entergy outage map now, and it does kind of look like all of Grand Isle, most of it at least, is without power.
Right.
Yeah, and that's happening quickly. You said we're already seeing wind gusts of 50 to 70 miles per hour.
Yes, ma'am, definitely.
And what about those folks who did stay behind? What are options for them when this storm really rolls through? Because it's not looking good, and we're not even, we're still several hours away from landfall.
Well, you really don't have any options. They have to hunker down where they are. I mean, Highway 1 is, I haven't seen it myself, is probably already underwater, so
Right.
There's no way to evacuate or leave. You have to find a higher structure that can withstand the hurricane force winds. You're talking now possibly 140 mile an hour winds pounding Grand Isle and the structures that are there. That's why we ask for a mandatory evacuation, because life's more important than property.
Definitely. And of course, as you said, most people heeded that evacuation and left. You still have some folks there. And Peyton was just talking about this area, saying now we're seeing 50 to 70 miles per hour winds. You just mentioned that's going to get up to almost 140 miles per hour. What do you imagine is going to be the devastation there?
Well, I would kind of say probably catastrophic. We'd have to look, and every storm is different, and everybody can give us stories. We've lived through them all.
Right.
What each storm has done over time. It depends on how the storm comes in, where it exits at, how much water it shoves. Zeta went through there last year, late October. They categorized it later as a Category 3 storm. We clocked on some vessels winds of 120 miles an hour. So some of those structures withstood that. The problem is that this storm keeps jogging a little bit closer to the island, where the high winds could be pounding it.
Yeah, and I guess that is encouraging to know that some of those structures were able to withstand those 120-mile-per-hour winds. But then you just never know. As you said, every storm is different. We have, of course, always been comparing these to other storms just to try to give people a sense of what's going to happen here. Does this remind you of another?
The highest winds
Right.
that I can remember that hit the island. You know, this is truly going to be a true test of the burrito levee and the improvements of the rock jetties on the island, on the bay side as well as on the Gulf side.
Yeah, and are you confident that those are going to help here?
You and I will find out tomorrow morning.
And look, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you for a second. We were pulling up this video. This is the video you were telling me you sent over. So just kind of tell us what you sent over, describe it a little bit. We're definitely seeing those wind gusts. Again, guys, 50 to 70 miles per hour already in Grand Isle.
Yes, I'm not sure what video you have tuned up right now, but I sent you 2 or 3. One showing the bay side where the water is already crossing Highway 1, and that's about 2.5 miles. That camera is about 2.5 miles from the bridge in Bridgeside, going into the island. The other video we sent you is showing the Gulf of Mexico, which is getting very angry and rising rapidly.
Yeah, and Peyton just told us that those wind gusts there are coming in at 53 miles per hour. And you can definitely see it just looking at this video, seeing the trees already blowing in the wind. It's hard to imagine that the storm is this far and this is what we're already seeing over there.
And look, those winds are now coming out of the northeast, so that's shoving the water up into the bay and into the island.
Yeah, and you mentioned that some of those structures withheld 120 miles per hour winds in past storms. The issue here is going to be those power outages, which we're already seeing all across Grand Isle, and how long it will take for that to be restored. We have to wait for the storm to pass, and of course there's going to be other devastation.
And that's one of the major issues, and you're talking about last time with Zeta, which came across the lower part of the state and the parish, where we had Grand Isle was out of power for at least 3 weeks minimum. And now you're talking about a storm that's going across basically the Grand Isle area, going up to Baton Rouge, Thibodaux, and all those areas that are going to have catastrophic effects that actually are going to make getting power back in those low-lying areas even longer and harder to get. So that's going to be an issue is recovery. And actually, Jefferson Parish now, we already have teams in place for lower Jefferson Parish to do search and rescue, too.
And we've been so focused on the wind because that's the major impacts you guys are seeing right now. But that storm surge, just frightening numbers we're seeing there in the teens, 15 feet possibly coming you guys' way.
And that's right. That's why I said that burrito levee is going to get a true test like it's never had before.
Definitely. All right, well, please keep us updated, guys. As you see there, Grand Isle already without power this morning. They are seeing wind gusts of up to 53 miles per hour. Ricky Template, please keep sending in pictures and video as you get them to us, and we'll check back in just a bit.
And thank you for keeping our viewers informed.
Of course. Stay safe. Thank you. Eric?
All right, we do want to go kind of parish by parish with Peyton, looking at the possibilities of the effects of this storm, and we're starting on the North Shore.
Yeah, let's start on the North Shore, and the North Shore will be the last people to really get on the most intense part, Eric. So by this afternoon and this evening, it'll start to go downhill out here, and the further west you go, the closer you get to the eye, the worse it's going to get. So right now, here's what we're thinking. On average, 70 to 80 mile per hour sustained winds, but you'll have gusts perhaps up to 90 to 110, and then 110 would be more likely in Tangipahoa Parish, into Livingston Parish, and close to the lake. Now, as you get to St. Tammany, as you go to Madisonville, Covington, Slidell, all the way up through Folsom, you name it, anywhere in St. Tammany, you could certainly see wind gusts 90 approaching 100 miles per hour. That will be later this evening into parts of tonight. So most of this is going to happen after dark on the North Shore. It'll start this afternoon, but the worst of it will continue until after dark and towards midnight. For Washington Parish, your winds could definitely still gust 70, 80 miles an hour. I think there'll be a little bit less up here, but certainly we got a lot of tall trees up here. If you live in a house that's next to a tall tree, think about where you would go just in case if a tree were to fall. where would it fall, or where would it, if it fell, where could you be safe in your home if it did fall on your home? So you got to keep that in mind. Other big problem on the North Shore is going to be for flooding from rain. We're going to see on average 10 inches. A few places could see more. Our rivers are going to have to be watched very closely. So if you live next to a river in a flood-prone area, you need to be planning for flooding there. And of course, on the lakefront, 5 to 8 feet, 5 to 8 feet is what we're going with now for Lake Pontchartrain. And the surge will be worse down here later tonight, going into tomorrow, as we have that strong southerly wind still pulling up into the center of that storm. So the winds this afternoon are going to be more out of the west here, or to the west here, out of the east. But as we go into tonight, they'll be more out of the south. Eric, that's for the North Shore.
And if we can, before we leave the North Shore, the reason they'll be seeing that storm surge, that water, and we won't so much on the South Shore, is that water will be pounding in from the Wrigley's into the lake and putting it up toward the North Shore.
Right, like let me move this a little bit. The water's coming in the Wrigley's and into the lake today. By tonight, though, this storm, as the storm travels to the north, the winds will start to transition out of the south later today as they wrap up into it. So it'll be more of a westerly wind and then an easterly or a southerly wind by tonight.
Okay. All right, let's hit the South Shore now.
Let's hit in the New Orleans metro here. So whenever we say the New Orleans metro, think of everywhere in the metro. Kenner, Metairie, all the West Bank, inside the levees, New Orleans East, you name it, Chalmette, this is the New Orleans metro. We have the potential to see some really strong winds here across the area. Could see some winds, and let me break this down because this is going to get tricky here in the metro. The west side of the metro, Kenner, going into St. Charles Parish, you could definitely see winds approaching 100 miles per hour with gusts over 120. That is a definite possibility, and that would happen. The winds are going to start to pick up in the next couple of hours and will be to hurricane force probably by lunchtime, and then they'll get really bad throughout the rest of the afternoon. That's the timeline, at least. Now, as you're in the east, you're going to be further away from the eye. You're probably going to miss out on the worst winds out here, but it's still possible that you see winds 80, 90 miles per hour out in the east. Down on the West Bank, same story. The further west you go, Westwego, Wagaman, more intense winds. The closer you are to Araby and going into Algiers, you're probably not going to see as the intensive winds as what they see out here, but still, you could approach 100 miles per hour. The storm surge, of course, outside the levees on the lakefront, we'll see flooding there on Lake Shore. 5 to 8 feet, 7 to 11 feet for those that live outside the levee out towards the Venetian Isles, and once you get on 90 out there, Eric. So that area is already likely seeing water rise, and it could get up that should actually say 8 to 12 feet. We've updated that at this point.
Yeah, whenever there's a southeast wind coming into the Wrigley's, Venetian Isles, all those camps out there, Lake Catherine, they all flood.
Yeah, they do. And so this will be significant rise of water. So that should be 8 to 12 feet. On the west, or on the lower Jefferson here, so once you get outside the levees, Jean Lafitte, Crown Point, they're going to see the more significant storm surge, perhaps, of 12 to 16 feet, Eric.
And rain is going to be a big problem for all of us. You're saying the entire metro area is going to be a problem. So the places that flood, I mean, they're going to flood.
They are. And, you know, here in the metro, on average, we're still going 7 to 10, but there's been some indications that it could be closer to 15 inches, and that's going to cause big problems. And you just hope that isn't the entire metro because, you know, the pumps are having to all pump out everything.
Yeah.
So any flooding we see in the city, and I think this is going to scare people because you're going to see a lot of rainfall come down later this afternoon into tonight. And it's going to look like water is rising in the streets. It's not from the levees. It's not storm surge coming in.
No.
We're not expecting that. And we've talked about that all morning because a lot of people are concerned about that, rightfully so. But it will be water from the rainfall and the pumps trying to keep up with it.
And this time we do not have that north wind pounding it toward the South Shore.
Yep.
And even if it were, we still have those 3 outfall canals with those massive floodgates, so that's going to protect. The problem with getting that much rain in this amount of time, there's no way we can pump that kind of water out.
You're exactly right. And so that's our big concern. The reason the surge doesn't look like a big deal for New Orleans, it's this. So a lot of people are wondering about Katrina. Obviously, it's the anniversary today. The reason that was such a problem, Katrina went to our west. It made landfall in Hancock County near the Pearl River, and the winds on the west side of that storm would have been coming down, it's not gonna let me draw on it, but it would have been coming down like this. So they were pounding into the city.
Yeah.
Now, what's gonna happen today, it's on this side of us. So the winds are going to be the complete opposite. They'll be out of the south for the most part today. So our winds will be rushing out to the lake and pushing it up to the North Shore.
The North Shore, so they're going to get it,
yeah, the North Shore is more concerned about that push.
And then Leslie, we're going to the river parishes now?
Yeah, I've gotten some messages about the river parishes. The river parishes could see some significant effects as well as that eye travels somewhere in the vicinity of here. So winds out in this area will start increasing later this morning. The worst will be this afternoon into this evening and even going into tonight. This is not going to be a quick event for anyone. It's going to last over 12 hours for some people. So 5 to 10 inches of rain, but look at this. Winds 110 to 130 with some gusts over 120 to 130 as well. So you're looking at some significant wind gusts possible through the river parishes, and especially as you travel closer and closer to that eye. So in St. Charles, St. John, LaPlace, Reserve, Lutcher, Vacherie, heading up towards Assumption and Ascension Parish, you could see wind gusts of 120 plus miles per hour, and that's a big concern. The storm surge will have to be watched. Right now we're thinking Lake Maurepas is about 4 to 6 feet, Lake Pontchartrain 5 to 8 feet, but as I mentioned, through today it's going to be more of a southeasterly kind of pushing into St. John there. So that's why we could see a lot of that flooding near I-10 that we normally see when we have a strong wind pushing water into St. John Parish, Eric. So that's
and in St. John, they've got some levee projects on the board. They're just not there yet.
Yeah, they need to be there. That will be good, but that's what we're watching with the storm surge potential into the river parishes.
And if I can ask you, since we're talking about all these parishes by parishes in the viewing area, if we keep on this track, is there any way to put like a wind gauge out to where, or a wind scenario out to where the most intense, how intense, and then as it goes out, what it'll be like?
You're going to have to rephrase it. I'm not sure. I was trying to understand and read a National Hurricane Center tweet at the same time.
And sometimes I explain things really weird.
Yeah.
In the center of the storm, we know that wind is going to be sustained at 150 miles an hour.
On the eye wall.
On the eye wall.
Yeah, the center
as it drops down.
Yeah.
And then as we get, because any place west, like Lutcher, Reserve, Booty, Destrehan, even Jefferson Parish, they're closer to that eye than here in the city.
They are. I wish I had one more detail on this graphic to help show it and divide it a little bit better, but all the areas in white could see 100 plus mile per hour wind gusts. I kind of think that breaks it down and helps you understand that if you were in the white here, it is reasonable that you see over 100 miles per hour. Now, there are going to be some down towards Thibodaux and Houma, especially that I think you'll be closer to 120 and 130, maybe a little higher to 140 as you get closer, and then 160 to 180 to even up towards 200 miles per hour near that eye and landfall. So that's where the worst will be.
And you're saying even as far as Slidell, that wind could be that strong?
A gust, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, a gust. Now,
what about sustained winds?
Sustained will be closer to the 80 to maybe 90 mile per hour as you get closer to the metro, we think. So the western side of the metro has a greater chance of seeing the 90 to 80 to 90, and then I think it'll start to decrease to maybe 60 or 70 to 60 as you get into the east here.
Well, that's still got the potential of downing trees, things like that.
Yeah, it's such a fine detail too, by the way, because of the track, and you hope you don't hope it takes this track, but this is currently based on that track.
And what's the next big update we're waiting for, the one that will be more definitive or the most definitive for you? Do we have to wait till 10 or will it be earlier?
No, we're just getting them every hour now, Eric, so we're fortunately getting that, and then once it makes landfall, we will stop getting the
yeah, so we're about 7 minutes away from the next update, unless it comes in a little early.
And I do want to mention, they did issue that extreme wind warning just now. And let me get into this, because a lot of people, for anyone who did end up staying down there in Lafourche and Terrebonne parishes, your phones are going to go off. And the reason they issued this is because they want you to take shelter from this hurricane moving on in. You need to treat this as a tornado warning. So it does include right on the outskirts of the New Orleans metro here for that extreme wind warning. Winds over 115 miles per hour are expected soon. That will happen more so as we go into the next couple of hours down along the coast, and then it will spread up over the area. So you see this purple box here, Eric?
Yeah.
That's where we're most likely to see the worst winds as we go into...
Well, at 7:35, my friend in Houma texted me right now the wind was about 15 miles an hour. That's going to change.
You said 15?
50. 726.
Yeah, I mean, just off the mouth of the river, I was talking, I bet that station went down. 114 mile per hour gust here at Southwest Pass, sustained at 105. We're now gusting to nearly 60 in grade 6. So the winds will continue to really pick up here, and that's where we have that extreme wind warning. So if you're down there, go to your safe spot, just like you treat this just like a tornado warning. Just make sure you are above an elevation to where you are safe from storm surge. So say run from the water, hide from the wind.
But again, that wind alert is for?
Well, it's for a zone, so it kind of includes different areas here, but it does include just outside of the metro. So as you get towards the West Bank and down towards Jean Lafitte, I got to pull it back up really quick.
While you're doing that, and we are talking about wind, let me read this real quick on talking about some power outages we have in our area. Right now, more than 10,000 are without power. Plaquemines Parish has the most with more than 4,300 outages. We spoke to Plaquemines Parish earlier about what the storm surge means to residents.
Now from Oakville Floodgate south to the Alliance Refinery, that levee system is a 7 to 11 foot height levee. That's why we issued that mandatory evacuation on Friday afternoon. And then from Alliance to West Point Lahash,